right. Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I would like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of November 30th, 2022, and welcome everyone to the council chambers. The City Council is conducting our weekly council meeting hybrid. This will allow us to reach members of our community who wish to participate via Zoom or those who wish to attend in person. It is our hope to continue this format to be as accessible as possible to our community. For those who wish to participate in the future via Zoom, you can find the public comment registration form on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Select the Register here to provide comment via Zoom link, and you will come to a form that you need to fill out. Once you submit it, you'll receive an email confirmation with the Zoom link and the phone number to the meeting. Please note that participants must submit the form at least 30 minutes prior to the meeting. If it's submitted after that time, you'll not receive the Zoom link and number to speak, but you may still participate the day of the meeting by coming in person. Please note we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. We also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Franklin.
Here.
Vice President Tui.
Here.
Councilmember Schwab.
Here.
Councilmember Fossey.
Here.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely.
Here.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
President Stonecipher.
Here. Councilmember Ryan, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Councilmember Zarlingo, will you please read the land acknowledgement this evening?
Certainly. This council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Stahobs people, and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they've hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and the water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. And do I hear a motion for approval of the minutes of November 16th, 2022?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui.
Abstain.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Abstain.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Franklin.
Good evening, President Stonecipher. First, it's my recommendation that we appoint Cynthia Andrews to the Everett Housing Authority Board for position number 5 for a 5-year term from November 30th, 2022 to October 6th, 2027.
Do I hear a motion?
Councilmember Ryan so moves the appointment of Cynthia Andrews to the HA Board.
I second it.
Thank you. A motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments before we take the roll? Councilmember Vogely.
I likely will be welcoming Cynthia straight away, because how could she not make it onto the board?
Thank you. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes.
Thank you. So welcome Cynthia to the Housing Authority Board, a very important board in our city. And then I'd like to hand it over to Councilmember Fossey, if I could, to read the resolution for the Indigenous month of November.
Yes. So a resolution of the City of Everett recognizing Native American Heritage Month 2022, whereas each year, November 1st through November 30th, United States celebrates National Native American Heritage Month. Native American Heritage Month is an opportunity to acknowledge the contributions of Native Americans throughout history of the United States and to our local community. It's also an opportunity to celebrate the vibrant cultures, traditions, stories, and triumphs, and to recognize the tragedies that need to be shared with future generations that impact us today. Native Americans speak and preserve indigenous languages, cultures, and religion of the past that have been forbidden and forcefully replaced with English, American culture, and religion using local boarding schools and other methods throughout the country. The city of Everett lies on the historic land of the Shtahobes people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Today, our city works towards showing respect to indigenous people and correcting stories and practices that erase or misrepresent their histories and cultures by having and using official land acknowledgement, actively participating in partnerships, and by sharing resources and educating the community and correcting false information. The city of Everett acknowledges the community and economic strength of the local tribes and deeply appreciates their contributions to the community, the state, the region, and the nation. The resilience of our tribal partners continues as advocates who lead the way in sustaining, protecting, and restoring ecosystems, natural resources, and traditional stories and teachings, and bringing cultural awareness and good health to future generations. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the city of Everett encourages all residents to seek opportunities to learn more about the histories and heritage of the Tulalip tribes and other tribes across the United States.
Thank you, Councilmember Fossey, and I also want to thank the staff that worked on, collaboratively with the tribes on the resolution, and the engagement team was very heavily involved and will continue to be engaged with our tribal partners. So thank you, Councilmember Fossey, for reading that on our behalf. And with that, I have
Council
no
President?
further comments.
I'm sorry. If it's a resolution, we probably should vote to pass it rather than a proclamation.
Oh, very good, thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved, the motion.
Councilmember Schwab, second.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments before we call the roll? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Okay, and with that, any other comments? Mayor, is that all for you this evening? Great, thank you. Angie, do we have anyone signed up for public comment this evening?
We do. We have some via Zoom and in chambers, but first we have received some written comments from Craig Scuttle, Patrick Hall, and Darren Leyenhorst, and these have been provided to council, administration, and to the clerk to be part of permanent record. So we have numerous individuals that wish to speak on items 17, 20, and 23. Some of which are in Zoom and here, but there are some other individuals wanting to speak for public comment on items other than those three I mentioned.
Thank you.
So first, we'll start with our virtual Zoom individuals, and I'd like to start with Paula Townsell. So Paula, if you could please unmute yourself, turn your camera on, and you have, if you can state your name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak. I'm going to display a timer for you, just one moment. Okay, and you can go ahead.
Thank you. Paula Townsell from Everett's District 3. I hope to wrap up my comments on the lack of public process of the redistricting commissioners and the failure to successfully complete their city charter mandated duties. I'm asking this council to withdraw your previous approval of the redistricting plan because of the lack of mandated public forums and a public hearing. There are 9 commissioners, but 2 commissioners only attended one single public forum each. The majority of public commissioners were the majority of public commenters were denied an audience and consideration by those commissioners. Each public forum had no more than 5 commissioners present, so 4 commissioners were absent, and they denied the public an opportunity to be heard by almost half of the commissioners. At least 2 of the public forums failed to have a quorum, with only 3 or 4 commissioners present. Without a quorum, it doesn't even pass the straight-face test that it was accepted as a public forum, as reported to you, the council, that all the mandated public outreach had been done. The purported District 1 public forum, which was held in District 2, had the lowest attendance of commissioners. Only 3 attended and heard directly from those marginalized and ignored residents. That not only does not pass the straight face test, but was abysmal attendance by the commissioners and is simply indefensible. As Mayor Franklin noted, we are the city. Me, each of you council members, city staff, and all of the commissioners. This is our first redistricting commission. It's a new process, but it's not an overwhelming process. We have an opportunity to correct the missteps. Hold a public forum in each district. Urge commissioners to actually attend to hear directly from the city residents. Why not meet that requirement with informational open houses as a public forum in each district to encourage actual participation and answer questions from the residents? Since a public hearing must also be held by the commissioners, that is where direct public testimony by residents should be collected before a map is finalized. Our city charter does matter. The requirements of the charter in the redistricting process matters. Providing City Council with accurate information on the lack of charter mandated public process by the Commission matters. I hope that my weekly research provided facts and insight so that we, all of us, can work to correct the missteps in the public process by the commissioners. If not, the injustice will remain in effect for the next 10 years. I know we can all do better in the city of Everett. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you, Paula. Moving to chambers, we have Steve, if he could please come to the podium. And please state your full name and city for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak, which there's a timer right there on that podium for you to the right. It'll
Okay,
notify you. Thanks.
thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members. This last weekend, we started Stuff-A-Bus. That's something we do with our transit agency. We've done it since before I started. It's been over 30 years. We received about 100 cubic feet of donations. We had 8 5x5x5 bins that got filled up afterwards. This is something that we can do because we want to, because we want to help the people in our community. We work with Volunteers of America, and the reason we work with Volunteers of America is because they keep the donations that they receive going out locally. And that's where we wanted to help, was our local neighbors. I have nothing against people down in Oregon or California or Idaho or any place else. But if we have people that are hurting here, why wouldn't we focus our resources here? And that's what we do. And we do it for 3 weekends every year leading up to Christmas. This was our first weekend, and we've got 2 more weekends. You're all welcome to come out and participate. We start at 10 o'clock in the morning. We're done by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Saturday and Sunday, each weekend. We also unload on Monday mornings. If you want to come out for that, that's about 9:30 in the morning up at the Volunteers of America. So that's one of the things that we can do because we have our own transit agency. You might have noticed today we had snow. We had quite a bit. One of the things that I do, and I know that other inspectors do as well, is we are in the community driving around. When I see somebody in a personal vehicle that's stuck, I don't drive by. I stop and I help them, because that's something that we can do, because they're our neighbors. I'm their employee, and why would I not help them? I guarantee you that if the talked about merger were to happen, they're most certainly not going to stop to help, because they have a different attitude about what their primary needs are, what they have to do. We're Everett. We have Everett Transit. We need to keep it Everett Transit because it's one of our resources. Thank you for your time and your consideration. Have a good night.
Thank you, Steve. The remaining comments are for the other items, 17, 20, and 23.
Thank you. Let's see, next, do we have an administrative update this evening?
No update this evening, thanks.
Thank you. And Mr. Hall, do you have anything from the city attorney's office for us?
No report from legal and no executive session. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to our consent agenda. We have 9 items on our consent agenda this evening. Do I hear a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Councilmember Ryan moves to adopt the consent agenda.
Vogely seconds.
We have a motion and a second on the consent agenda. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. We have 8 proposed items. Items 10 through 14 are first readings, so I will be reading those into the record. Starting with item 10, Council Bill 2211-53, first reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled PGSF Bond Street Combined Sewer Improvements, Fund 336, Program 033. The third and final reading will be on December 14th this year. Item 11, Council Bill 2211-54, first reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Reservoir Number 3 Replacement, Fund 336, Program 016, and repealing ordinance number 3815-21. The third and final reading for this will also be on December 14th. Item 12, Council Bill 2211-55, first reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled WFP Air Scour Blower Building Replacement, Fund 336, Program 034, third and final reading on December 14th. Item 13 is Council Bill 2211-56, first reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Edgewater Park Renovations, Fund 354, Program 084, to accumulate all costs for the project. Third and final reading on December 14th. Finally, item 14 is Council Bill 2211-57, first reading. Adopt an ordinance amending the Everett Municipal Code to clarify applicability of an 8-year limited property tax exemption, amending Chapter 3.78 EMC. And the third and final reading for that will also be on December 14th. Items 15 through 17 are second readings and were read into the record at a previous meeting. Item 16 will be discussed during the budget hearing later on this agenda. Item 17 will be discussed after the briefing on Council Bill 2211-58 later on this agenda, as they are both related to project labor agreement ordinances. Do you have any questions on the proposed action items?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
I would propose that item number 17 be spoken about right now, because a lot of the folks in the room have signed up to speak to it. And if it was going to be going with the agenda item number 20, that should have been noted.
I'll allow that.
Thank you.
We'll hear comments. So those who would like to speak on item 17 may come forward and do so now. Angie, do you have?
Okay, so we do have one individual on Zoom. Donnie, if you could unmute yourself and share your screen, activate your camera if possible. And please state your full name and city of residence for the record. And you will have 3 minutes to speak. I'll be sharing my screen for you to have the timer. You can go ahead.
All right, thank you. My name is Donnie Donovan, and I'm in Seattle, Washington. I just want to say, first of all, I would like to say good evening, Council. I'm the Legislative and Political Director for the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, District Lodge 751. We stand in support of Council Bill 2211-52. Project labor agreements not only benefit the community, it also protects taxpayers by eliminating costly delays due to labor conflicts or shortages of skilled workers. They also provide structure and stability to large construction projects, not to mention ensuring compliance with laws and regulations governing workplace safety and health, equal employment opportunity, and labor and employment standards. I ask that the council supports this project labor agreement ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Donnie. Sorry for the audio glitch there.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, so we're going to move to our individuals in chambers. For item 17, if Adam could please come to the podium, Adam Lamb. And please state your full name and city of residence for the record. And you have 3 minutes to speak, and there's a timer with lights. When it gets to yellow, it'll be 30 seconds left.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Adam Lamb. I live in Bothell, Washington. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the ordinance. I apologize, my voice, I lost my voice last week. In support of the ordinance that a lot of the council members have worked really hard along with the community members on writing and putting a lot of time and energy into. Our members, a lot of them here tonight, a lot of our other building trade members, very much look forward to seeing what the mayor does and supporting this. We loved having her come in front of our members when we supported her for election and listen to her speeches about apprenticeship and growing the community and how well PLAs and apprenticeship helps that. So the work you guys are doing is amazing and we really appreciate it. So thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Adam. Next, we have Kaylee Flint. If she could please come to the podium. So please state your full name and city of residence for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak. And there's a light there, like I explained earlier, that'll notify you when you have 30 seconds left. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for having me. I'm also part of the local 299, or 292, sorry. My name is Kaylee. I am a field agent with the local. I'm a member and have been a member for the last 5 years. I'm here this evening to speak in support of the CB 221152, the project labor agreement ordinance submitted by the council. This ordinance brings the most benefit to the city of Everett and the workers in the city. It's been appropriately stakeholdered with laborers and vetted by the city's legal team. The most important is supporting the people who live and work in the city of Everett. At $5 million, the threshold is not an excessive burdensome to the city's public works. Provides value to the workers, people of Everett, while not impacting the city's smaller projects, small work rosters, job orders, or emergency work. Historically, the city public works project runs into approximately $1 million to $7 to $8 million range. With a few projects more than $10 million, CB 221152 is a balanced ordinance that creates value for the city and the working class. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaylee. Next, if Larry Montgomery could please come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Larry Montgomery. I live within the city of Everett. I'm a business agent and proud member of Laborers Local 292. I'm here this evening to speak in support of CB 2211-52, the project labor agreement ordinance submitted by Councilwoman Bogley. This ordinance brings the most benefit to the city of Everett and the workers in the city. It's been appropriately stakeholdered with labor and vetted by the city legal team. Most importantly, it supports the people who live and work in the city of Everett At a $5 million threshold, it's not excessively burdensome to the city public works, provides value to the people, the working people of Everett, while not impacting the city's smaller projects, small works roster, job order contracting, or emergency work. Historically, the city public works project run in the approximate $1 million to $7 to $8 million range, with a few projects more than $10 million. CB 2211-52 is a balanced ordinance that creates value for the city and the working class. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Larry. Justin Pawliczek, if you could please come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
I'm Justin Pawliczek. I'm with Cement Masons and Plasters, Local 528. I'm also the president of the Northwest Building Trades currently. I've also been a member of this community for the last 25 years, and I am fully in support of Senate Bill 2211-52. The city of Everett historically has been built on blue-collar workers. And PLAs and apprenticeship opportunities are invaluable. I mean, looking forward into the future, what is your legacy really going to be? As custodians of this community, we will never stop fighting for labor and the community and raising the tides for all community workers throughout not only the city of Everett, but throughout the state and the rest of the U.S. You can be etching as leaders the value, what the community brings, or you can finish your time as council members and wonder what you could have done. What will your legacy be? We are all in here fully in support of what this bill could potentially be for the community, and we urge you to please, please support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Sam Hem, if you could please come to the podium. If you could please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
3 minutes. I don't know if I'll use all 3 minutes.
Okay.
Good evening, council. My name is Sam Hem. I'm a proud resident of Everett in the District 1. I also get to represent sheet metal workers in Western Washington. We cover sheet metal workers from the Canadian border all the way down to just north of Oregon. We've got about 4,700 members in our local. I looked this morning. We have 251 members that live right here in the city of Everett, which made me very proud to live amongst 250 others. Like Paul said 2 weeks ago, finding an apprenticeship and finding an opportunity is life-changing. Changed my life 27 years ago now. I started my career after I spent my last $20, and I ended up getting a job, and they said, hey, we're going to have you sign up and become a union member and get training. And it's just afforded me a lot of opportunities. I've had the ability to represent members for the last 17 years, and I get to see on a weekly basis apprentices that got to also grasp that opportunity. I've been representing members and contractors where they've worked under project labor agreements. Some of those were open shop contractors in the beginning, and they brought their core workers on to the projects, right? And they established a relationship with us, and they ended up signing full agreements with us later on because they saw the value and the ability to get those resources. There was some, what I would consider misinformation back in November 16th that talked about burdens that PLAs bring to the community. I don't have enough time to talk about those because my intro was a little too long. Priority hire WIMBY contractors actually see a benefit and a value of being able to actually gain access to these opportunities. I'd like to close with what was discussed 2 weeks ago was that the contractors in the city enter into an agreement when it comes to a project. A project labor agreement or a community workforce agreement is an agreement that the workers get to be a part of, because they don't get to be a part of the contract when the employer and the city or council or county procure work, right? It's between the company and the entity. Project labor agreements let the workers be part of that agreement, and that's what the workers want is security. They want to make sure that if there's any dispute for wages and benefits, it can be handled quickly as opposed to waiting for the project, or the prevailing wage department to come around and solve those disputes for them. I have 4 seconds, so thank you so much for hearing me out tonight. Please vote in support of 52.
Thank you, Sam. Next, if we could have Miguel Perry come to the podium.
Can I pass these out to the mayor? And thank you.
And then please state your full name and city
Yes,
residence.
my name is Miguel Perry. I'm a resident of Arlington, but I represent hundreds of carpenters who live in Everett. And I'm a proud member of Local 70 and representative for the Northwest Carpenters Union. Mayor, Franklin, Everett City Council members, good evening, buenas tardes. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you regarding my support for ordinance CB 2211-52. The reason I support this ordinance is because labor, all of labor, is behind it. And because labor stakeholders were involved in drafting the ordinance. I understand the city has brought forth a second similar ordinance, number CB 2211-58, which does not have the best interests of labor, the community, or building a strong workforce for the future by investing in apprenticeships. It is convoluted, confusing, and labor has not been invited as a stakeholder to the table. So to make it clear, I am saying yes to ordinance CB 2211-52, and I'm saying no to ordinance CB 2211-58. Do PLS discriminate against non-union contractors? The answer to that question is no. No, because in public works, contractors only have to agree to abide by the PLA and the underlying local agreement while working on the particular project. However, PLS do discriminate against contractors who misclassify and cheat the system to gain an unfair cost advantage over fair contractors who play by the law. Because PLS create a stronger enforcement that respects workers and secures an economy that works above the table. At the heart of the issue today is the fact that many construction companies are taking shortcuts and sidestepping lawful hiring practices so they can gain a competitive edge. This is an issue that impacts everyone. When employers avoid tax laws and workers' protections by treating employees as independent contractors, the construction industry is disrupted by behavior that is fundamentally illegal. PLS are an effective mechanism you can put in place to protect the city, workers, law-abiding contractors, and taxpayers against payroll fraud and a prevailing underground economy in the construction industry. You have a report from 2021 by the Department of Revenue of Washington State, the Washington State Department of Labor. Is that my time?
Your time is up.
Look it up. You will be surprised. Everyone benefits with PLS. Please consider today passing ordinance CB 2211-52. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel.
Anybody wants to donate their time?
If Aiden Noel could please come to the podium. I'm speaking for the next person to come up. If you could please state your full name, city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Yeah, my name's Aiden Noel. I'm a resident of Everett, Washington. I work for the city of Everett as well, facilities maintenance. I just wanted to speak in support of 2211-52. I think it would be really beneficial to the city to be hiring qualified contractors to work on our projects, something I have a vested interest in because I work on them every day. A lot of times we'll see some installations go sideways and you know, it ends up costing the city a lot more money. It costs everybody a lot more money. I think it would be beneficial for the labor force and for the city itself to maybe invest more carefully in some of their projects. And I think it would do a lot for the community, a lot for the laborers who live within city limits. So thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Eden. John Trainer, if you could please come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, I'm John Trainer. I live in Everett, Washington, District 2. I am a journeyman electrician, and I'm the political director for IBW 191. I'm here tonight in support of CB 221152, providing minimum labor standards to covered projects in the city of Everett on projects of $5 million or more is a perfect way for this city to demonstrate its willingness to support workers in the community by investing our money in this community and its workers. Minimal labor standards that are put forth on project labor agreements set the standard for how workers are treated. This matters. This has value. Let's not muddy the waters here. There are a lot of anti-worker studies out there that seek to undermine project labor agreements. They say that they are too expensive, that they will limit the available contractor pool. There are equally as many studies out there that show that they do not do that. We have heard every single one of these arguments before. These arguments are anti-worker and follow the very same trope every time. Here's what we do know. Project labor agreements are tools to provide good and safe working conditions to all workers on covered projects, whether they are union or not. Is that valuable? We think it is. We've been working on this for a very long time with Councilmember Vogely and later with Councilmember Fossey. We have stakeholdered this, and if you look out in this room, workers and worker organizations like IBW 191, our 2,400 members, 652 which live in the city of Everett with 1,200 household voters. We support this, and we think you should too. Thank you.
Thank you, John. If Ethan Fall could please come to the podium. Please state your full name and city residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Ethan Fall, live in Granite Falls, work in Everett. I'm a laborers 292 business agent. Been a laborer for 10 years plus. You know, I was an apprentice, so you know, apprenticeship utilization is important. But I'm here to speak out against CB 2211-58. As a labor union, we're in support of CB 2211-52. You know, it helps us out. It helps everybody who needs to, you know, go to work. It provides quality contractors, quality work, you know, so it's really hard to follow all these guys, but I think we're all kind of beating the dead horse here, and we're stating what we want. We're against CB 221158, and we're for the CB 221152. So that's it. Simple, sweet. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. And President Stone Cipher, we have one more person to speak on 17 that's on Zoom.
Thank you.
So April, if you could please unmute your microphone, turn on your camera if possible, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. I'll share my timer with you in just a moment here. And you can go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you, council members, for the opportunity to provide some comments on this important proposal today. My name is April Sims, and I serve as Secretary Treasurer and President-elect of the Washington State Labor Council. As the AFL-CIO in Washington State, we represent over 600 locals who in turn represent over 500,000 union members in every community and in nearly every industry. I'm very pleased to be here today to speak in support for project labor agreements and community workforce agreements as a strategy the city of Everett should employ to maximize the impact of your investments for your residents. Project labor agreements and community workforce agreements accomplish 3 worthy goals for Everett. First, they help to guarantee project delivery by securing labor stability with predictable labor costs. Second, they provide significant training and workforce development opportunities through apprenticeship utilization standards. Our state needs more workers in construction, and agreements like these provide certainty of work and an opportunity for those who earn while they learn, debt-free, hands-on, with good wages, family-sustaining health care, and reliable retirement plans. And finally, PLAs and CWAs ensure that the public dollars entrusted in your care stay in the region. The local hire provisions will drive earnings to workers who live in and around Everett. These dollars will be spent at businesses in Silver Lake, on Colby Avenue, on Broadway, and along Highway 99. They will pay mortgages in Snohomish County and provide food on the table for kids in Everett Public Schools. We also know that these agreements, especially for public work contracts, is that they expand the training and earning opportunities for workers and apprentices of color. Nearly 30% of apprentices in this state are people of color. A disproportionately high number considering our non-white population is around 21%. And those proportions have only increased in recent years by 15% from 2020 to 2021. These figures are possible because of project labor agreements and community workforce agreements in public sector contracting. And these numbers only improve when communities like Everett take bold, proactive steps to make certain it is so. So thank you for your consideration today. We hope that you do the right thing for the workers and the communities of Everett by adopting this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, April. And that is all we have for item 17 right now.
Council President, could I
Yes.
offer one clarification, please?
Yes.
Several speakers mentioned that this ordinance had been vetted by the legal department. And I just want to clarify that often when we're presented with a proposed ordinance, we provide advice on how it will affect other departments, city business, the public at large. That was not our marching orders here. We essentially proofread it, made sure there were no ambiguities internally, and made sure that terminology conformed with state law. So I just don't want there to be any misunderstanding that vetted is some kind of comprehensive stamp of approval.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. Okay, that will bring us to the bottom of our proposed items, so we will move on to our action agenda. Item 18 is Council Bill 2211-49, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance establishing Everett utility rates for 2023 to 2024 and amending EMC 14.04.020, EMC 14.60.010, EMC 14.16.712, and EMC 14.16.713. Do I? Yes, I'm sorry, item 18. Did I say the wrong number?
No, I just
Okay.
only heard half of what you were saying. Yeah, I will move to say yes on that.
Okay, we
Sorry.
have, there was a public hearing that we opened on November 9th. Do we have anyone signed up to speak on this tonight, Angie?
No, we do not.
Okay, so I think first we'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
That I will do. I move to close the public hearing.
Councilmember Ryan seconds.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan. Yes. President Stonecipher.
Yes. And now we will entertain a motion on the main action, which is to adopt an ordinance establish the Everett utility rates for 2023 and 24.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments before we take the roll? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. We're moving on to item 19, and item 19 is Council Bill 2211-43. This is the third reading. Adopt an ordinance relating to animal control amending EMC Chapter 6.04 and 6.08.025. Do I hear a motion?
Councilmember Tui moves the motion.
Is that to close?
Wait, to what?
Is there,
Is that to close the,
There
we
were-
need
I
to
don't
close the,
I don't think there was a hearing.
Is it a public hearing or no?
It is not a public hearing. This is an action item.
I have,
Second it for.
I have 5 motions to amend the proposed ordinance.
Well, let's get a second on there so we get the motion on the table.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. And Councilmember Fosse.
I have 5 motions to amend the proposed ordinance. The last 2 are an alternate to each other, so my 4th motion to amend is approved by the council, then my 5th won't matter, and that'll be withdrawn. Amendment 1, the staff supports. First, I move to amend the proposed ordinance in order to correct the scrivener's error on follows. On section 1, page 3, the service dog or service animal definition should reference RCW 49.60.040. 25 instead of RCW 49.60.04024. On section 4, page 9, in subsection 2A, it should say to B instead of B2. And on section 4, page 9, rather than having 2 subsection E's, it should have subsection F instead of E.
Wait, are
Due
these-
to the
are
added
these-
section.
Are these separate amendments?
Nope, this is the first one.
The first one. Okay, thank you. Keep going.
That's it. Staff supports it.
Okay, these are Scrivener's errors, and do we have staff here to explain anything if we need to know?
Hi there, Glennis Frederickson, Animal Services. We are in support of this amendment. They are errors that were discovered.
Thank you. We have a motion to amend. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. We will take a vote on the motion to amend. Would anyone like to speak to this motion before we call the roll?
I understand Scribner's errors. That's all.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments before we vote on the motion to amend with the Scrivener's errors? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes.
Okay, amendment number 2, staff also supports this. Second, I move to amend section 4, page 8, subsection 16 by removing the words "that is 7 days or older or has opened its eyes," whichever occurs sooner. This is in order to prohibit anyone except a licensed veterinarian from performing these procedures on newborn puppies or domestic animals.
We have a motion to amend.
Oh, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to amend. Are there any questions or comments? Would you care to speak to this?
Staff is in support of this.
Okay, and because we didn't have these in advance, can you explain what this is about?
So the state RCW, when they prohibited these certain medical procedures that would be done by a non-veterinarian, they excluded, or made an exemption for puppies that are newborns essentially. And Councilmember Fosse brought up the question of why we would want to exclude this. And it looks like this was something that was originally intended on the state level to not have the exclusion, and perhaps there were some individuals that were in favor of performing that themselves. Our veterinarian does feel that any medical procedure, even on a newborn puppy, should have some type of pain control, and that should be administered by a veterinarian, so.
Very well, thank you. Any other questions or comments before we take a vote on the motion to amend? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes.
Okay, amendment number 3. Third, I move to amend, and staff supports this. I move to amend section 5, page 10, subsection E by removing the words "any finder, in addition to reporting as provided in this section, shall, within 7 days of finding, cause to be published in a newspaper or general circulation once each week with 2 consecutive weeks notice of finding with description of the animal. This is in order to allow the finder of any stray animal to adopt that animal with just Everett Animal Shelter doing the notice requirements, such as on the city website, because it's an outdated clause.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second.
Question,
Yes, question.
unless you want to speak
Councilmember
to it
Vogely.
first. Does that mean put it in the paper or don't put it in the paper?
It's an outdated thing that had the newspaper in it, so we just updated it because they already do stuff.
Okay, thank you.
So at this point, we would then not be posting notice in the local papers?
Correct.
Where would notice be posted?
So we do list all found reports. They are available for people to view. They're also posted, found animals that come into the shelter are posted on our website. We find that, well, I'm not sure very many people at all actually post in the newspaper, and so this would sort of eliminate that requirement that's not being followed in general, and ensure that we're then making sure all of that information is posted either online or on our website or social media.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before we call the roll? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes.
Okay, so this is amendment number 4, staff is neutral. Fourth, I move to amend by adding in a new section to the ordinance amending EMC 6.04.040C by adding the words, except that facilities housing one or more roosters shall be required to obtain a facility license. This is in order to allow people to have roosters in Everett, but only if they have a facility license. And I could explain more later.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
So this comes from, there was a proposed ban to be put in Everett on roosters. I do have constituents that do have roosters, but there have been complaints about roosters that have been, as far as noise complaints in Everett. But there are a lot of other owners of roosters that do not have noise complaints, and it's kind of one of those scenarios of, you can all have dogs, but some people have dogs that bark excessively. So with roosters, there's different varieties that can have not quite a crow. And so a universal ban for people that currently have roosters for educational purposes, 4-H, et cetera, I don't think it's right to have an outright ban for these particular constituents, so speaking on their behalf, to have that exception, so that would be additional licensee fee that they would have to pay and take those additional steps. I know that this is something that would be a trial kind of situation, so if it doesn't end up working out as planned, we can revisit it as a future ban. But for now, with constituents that currently have roosters that are responsible owners and do not have, major complaints by their neighbors, I think we should have the allowance for that pet exception.
And staff's response to this?
So staff is neutral on this, although I will say, as we have discussed, there's some skepticism as to our ability to adequately enforce this to the level that would reach the same outcome as proposed initially in terms of reducing noise complaints by roosters.
And so I did explain to staff that if it doesn't, that I am happy to bring forward something in the future to revisit this. But as for the current owners that are responsible owners, I'd like to give them a chance to mitigate those and still be, taking care of the nuisance issues as well.
Other questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Tui.
So how many, I know that we've, the peafowl, definitely, I know that there's been a lot of complaints, though I don't think we have any more of those. I used to have some in my neighborhood, so I do know. But on the rooster, how many complaints does the city get?
Ooh, that's a good question. Probably at least a couple a week.
Okay.
Just in general
So,
terms.
Enough, yeah, okay.
The challenge that we have with the complaints is that people will contact us to complain that there's noise in their neighborhood, but very few of them actually follow through with providing a signed witness statement so that we can actually proceed with a complaint. So we certainly want to make sure that we're not just using alleged complaints as opposed to legitimate, valid complaints about people who have roosters.
And I'd like to add that a flock in absence of a rooster, you will oftentimes have a hen that will take upon itself to become a lead crowing member of the flock. So just keep that in mind, that there is also different scenarios in play. I personally have a bantam rooster, and because it is a mini little tiny bird, it has a lot of attitude, but not very much crow. And so the different varieties can have different impacts.
Other council member comments? Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, I am particularly interested, I grew up on a farm. We had hundreds of chickens and a few roosters, but my bedroom was several hundred feet away from that, so it wasn't a real big issue. I'm most concerned about the ability to make this work practically, to make it enforceable, because I do think we have an obligation to the residents not to have noisy animals, whether it's dogs or roosters or whatever. And it sounds like you're ambiguous about that. I had one associated question, and that is in terms of complaints and filtering that to legitimate complaints or more serious complaints. Can complaints be made anonymously?
They can under certain circumstances, but it's hard to prosecute something that doesn't have a person attached to the witness statement. So, and our officers are typically not parked out in the neighborhood listening to hours and hours of the noise. And so it's difficult to have sort of probable cause to actually have a valid complaint. It's a valid conviction, essentially.
So facility licenses are 1 year.
Councilmember Fosse, let other council members ask their questions, please.
So people who want to have roosters would either need to get a facility license, or at least if there was a complaint. I mean, if they just had roosters and no one was complaining, you're not out actively responding or searching for any of those things either.
That's what the amendment would state, yes.
I'm just wondering if there's a way to trial this to see if it works or not. Because I mean, if it works, it's a nice way to cleave between troublesome roosters and ones that aren't. But I know neighbors can be really reluctant to complain to another neighbor. That's why I asked about anonymity, because that's a hard thing with disputes between neighbors. And it sounds like you're in the middle of those with some frequency.
And the way the code is written is there actually needs to be more than one neighbor complaining. So it says complaints by neighbors, multiple. So it's typically not just one individual against, asserting that the other one is, has a noisy rooster. It has to be multiple people.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Vogely, you had your hand up.
Thank you. I can attest that hens can crow awfully loudly at any time during the day, and that is in my neighborhood, but I don't have chickens at this time. And I fought for them in Bremerton, but that's a whole nother story. And I just thank you for bringing this forward, and I will be wanting to say yes to the amendment.
A council member,
Ryan, sorry. Hey, you works too. I was curious in the amendment if there's something baked in for the review date, or if the ordinance itself comes back on a regular cadence where we do have something where there is like a due date for review, just to ensure it's working.
We don't have anything in there at this point.
It was a verbal discussion that if it's not working out a year and we still have a problem with nuisance things, it's a 1 year license that people have to pay a facility fee, and so the expectation is when you approach your average person who is a backyard chicken raiser and you say, okay, now you have to pay a fee to have this particular bird, most likely they're going to get rid of that $5 bird than have to pay a facility fee. So I'm thinking that'll probably end up resolving most of the issues, but there are going to be problem ones. And so that's why, coming back to us in, a year and letting us know kind of how it's working out and then revisiting it then I think is a great option.
Right. Council members Zarlingo, and then we'll go to Vice President Tui.
Well, an associated question then, do you need a corroborating report, that is 2 reports, to take action on a rooster if they're just on the existence of a rooster? If someone, say my neighbor had a rooster and it was crowing and it was irritating, but I didn't get another neighbor to do that, but I said, well, there's a rooster there, they should have a facility fee, sorry. They should have a facility license. Would you require a corroborating statement on the existence of the rooster before you ask them to get a facility license?
That's a good question, probably for legal. If someone were to, if someone were to state that their neighbor has a rooster, and then their neighbor states to us that they don't have a rooster, that's a good question.
President Strohsheimer, we do have Attorney Flora Diaz on Zoom. She's wishing to speak. I'm wondering if it's going to work. Can you go ahead, Flora?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Okay, yes,
Hi,
good,
Flora.
thanks.
Hi, yes. So if animal control receives a report that there's a rooster and roosters aren't allowed, then the animal control officer would have a reason to go and check and see if there's a rooster. Or if animal control receives a report that there's a rooster and they know that a facilities license is required, if the amendment, for example, were approved, then that, and there wasn't a facilities license for that property, that would also be a reason for the animal control officer to go check.
But that would be based just on one report.
Right. So the difference is that in order to have an actual violation, like a ticket or some of these violations of the animal code are also criminal charges, then you need to have a witness. You have to substantiate what's going on, such as by somebody signing their name under penalty of perjury that this is what is really happening. It could be noise complaint or it could be other violations of the animal code. And if a animal control officer witnesses it, him or herself, then we have that information. They're the witness. They saw what happened. They saw the rooster. But that's for actually having a full citation or a charge. If it's just to investigate what's going on, they can respond to a complaint and investigate. The trouble the animal control officers have with noise is that maybe the rooster isn't crowing or the dog isn't barking when they go out there. And also the noise, the way the noise ordinance is set up, it has to be emanating from the property and there have to be complaints from multiple neighbors. So it doesn't work as well to have the animal control officer when it comes to noise, but as to the existence of a rooster and whether they have a facilities license, certainly the animal control officer could figure that out.
Vice President Tui.
Well, Flora just kind of answered my question was, when a complaint comes in for a loud animal, what are our actions? What can we do? And I think she kind of answered my question on that. So that would apply to roosters or anything, any animal that was barking or going crazy at hours that were disturbing.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Schwab, did I see your hand up on this? Okay, I have a couple questions. So I don't know exactly the genesis of this, but I do know that I was receiving, I think other council members may have received it, quite a few complaints about some neighbors in the south end that were being bothered by a rooster. And I was really frankly surprised that we allowed that in our code. And so I think perhaps that helped spur some of these changes that we're talking about now. Because I know of other people that live in other cities, and I do have friends who have chickens in Seattle and Kirkland, but as far as I know, neither place allows them to have a rooster. Are there any other, there are reasons that we don't allow roosters. This would drive me crazy if they were, I have a hard enough time sleeping anyway. I wouldn't want to have to get woken up at 3 in the morning or something.
I'm not aware of other municipalities that allow roosters. I know unincorporated Snohomish County, you know, that's a different story. But I'm not aware of any other cities at this time that allow them.
Yeah. And there's a reason for that. As we become more and more dense, I'm sure there are fine roosters, but it's hard to tell, what's going to be a good one and what isn't going to be a good one. And I'm really reluctant to set up a whole bureaucratic system where people are out looking for roosters and checking to see if there are licensing fees. And I think what happens when people get faced with a fine is not that they pay the fine or decide to get rid of the animal, but that they just don't pay the fine and carry on with their life. So I'm very reluctant to go along with this part. Councilmember Vogely and then Councilmember Fossey.
I believe a few years ago we changed the dangerous dog ordinance, and so I'm reminded of that because there's varying types of roosters. Some of them are annoying. There are varying types of dogs, and some of them are annoying or vicious. And it's just how much the owner does it. So I still very much appreciate that we can't discriminate against roosters in general, just like, people in general. So that's why I Still I'm saying, yeah.
So it wouldn't be setting up a new system. I mean, there are already fees and things that people are doing. So it's not a new system, it's just an addition to the facility fee. So it's just adding to it.
Vice President Tui.
So how would we notify the rooster owners to do this? I mean, that's problematic right there.
Presumably, we'd have some communication campaign that would
Yeah, I
would
mean,
let
we could
people know.
issue a media release. It would probably be, honestly, would probably be on a complaint basis that we would follow up on most of these, as is most of our ordinances, you know, that we, for the animal control code.
Councilmember Zerlingo.
If we're set to consider a sequence of related ordinance or
yes.
amendments here, should we consider both of those? I
No.
mean, are there? So we won't know what the other alternative is until we vote on this one.
It's, well, yeah, it's for the grandfathering and it's not for the, yeah. It's
Got it. Thank you.
I call the question.
Yes, any other questions or comments before we take the roll on the amendment to allow roosters under certain circumstances with a licensing fee? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui,
No.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yeah, I'll vote, with the condition we do this in a year. That we will reevaluate this.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
No. Motion carries.
That's all I have.
Okay. I would like to propose an amendment that this ordinance sunsets in 12 months from the date that it goes into effect.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second to sunset this within 12 months. Any
I
questions
made
or
the motion.
comments?
I'll make the
I'll
second.
speak to the motion, just
Okay.
this gives us the discipline to revisit this and find out what's going on in our community with this.
Is that a sunset like upon review?
It'll sunset unless council acts on it, basically. So it would be up to us to bring it forward for a review and decide if it works, but otherwise it goes away. Any questions or comments before we take the roll?
Staff support?
Thank you. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. That brings us to, item 20, the council briefing agenda. Okay, we've got, yes.
Now you need to vote on the motion as amended by
Oh,
this.
my gosh, thank you. Now we have the motion as amended. Any questions or comments before we take the final roll call? Please take the roll.
Vice President Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Okay, we're moving on to our council briefing agenda. These items come before the city council serving as a council committee of the whole and are likely to be scheduled at a future meeting. Item 20 is a first and second reading. I'll read this into the record. Council Bill 2211-58, first and second reading, adopt an ordinance relating to project labor agreements and the utilization of apprentices on public works construction projects, adding new sections to Chapter 3.80 Everett Municipal Code. And the third and final reading, it was designed for this to occur on the same time that the other project labor agreement is on the agenda, so we can consider both at the same time. And that will happen next week on December 7th. And so the council may recall that at the last meeting, council members Zarlingo motioned and I seconded the request to work with legal to explore options as it relates to this. And so council members Zarlingo, do you want to make a few comments, and then we'll have Ryan Sass give us our briefing.
Thank you, yes. First, I want to express my thanks for those who came to testify or to do public comment tonight and at our last meeting. This is complicated and consequential policy, and I want us to consider this thoroughly, get all the input we can. So 2 weeks ago, I spoke about the work we've done in the Infrastructure and Transportation Committee to better understand the city's contracting process on this vital public infrastructure, the existing 2019 resolution on project labor or community workforce agreements, and a new proposed ordinance. I, the city, and I believe all council members have a strong interest in advancing the state of skilled labor here in Everett and in our region. Contractors, large and small, established and minority, and disadvantaged, have expressed serious concerns about the ordinance advanced 2 weeks ago. City staff worked to provide specific information about practical impacts. These are the owners, these are the people who do the contracting. I think they know it in the greatest depth in terms of those practical impacts. We don't have monetary room to maneuver here if we miss on these estimates of the consequences. Recent presentations from Public Works have explained how we're only doing the most critical capital improvements because of that. We've recently voted on rate increases and heard about inflation in the numbers related to building and projects that are well above the consumer numbers that already seem high. Our facilities and public works departments have done all they can to encourage competition and as many bidders as possible on projects to yield the most reasonable costs. We've heard directly from our contractors that in many or most cases, they will not bid on projects that require PLAs, especially projects that are regarded as medium or small in the range of $30 million or less. Those are the kind of thresholds that are used in federal, state, and other communities around the region. Normally, we'd work with staff to understand the priorities and goals of these kinds of measures and the full context, a process that would involve some months of work and broad consultation among a bunch of different stakeholders, including the utility ratepayers and taxpayers in this region. That was not how this ordinance was brought forward. The motion I made 2 weeks ago and the work that's been done to create a different ordinance, an alternate, was undertaken to find something more workable for the city, its future contractors, both the union and non-union, and more affordable for its community members. The purpose was also to create more opportunity for minority-owned, women-owned, and disadvantaged business enterprises. It was also designed to add efforts to broaden and deepen the use of apprenticeships as a way to develop a large pool of skilled labor and provide better opportunity for our community members who are interested in careers in the skilled trades. However, I should note that even this ordinance, as with the other one concerning PLAs or CWAs, was brought forward without the extensive prior work and study by the city staff, the ones who will have to make this work. The alternate measure is an alternate only and not my first choice about how to handle these measures. Staff has done some considerable work to prepare a comparison of the existing resolution and the two proposed ordinances that just came out today. The key differences in the comparisons they produced are all about flexibility. In particular, flexibility for the council to be able to make careful decisions on costly and consequential projects, things that have an impact on utility rates and on the city's general budget. We're charged with acting in the public interest. One way to summarize the alternate ordinance is that it's a result of my motion 2 weeks ago, that it preserves that flexibility. The original ordinance does not require that flexibility, requiring PLAs even when it is not in the public interest. I think it's our clear responsibility to focus on that public interest and the flexibility to act according to it. Thank you.
I think we have Ryan Sass here to brief us on this.
Good evening, Ryan Sass with Public Works. I'm happy to report that I have in the past owned chickens, but I currently do not have a chicken or a rooster. Thank you for the opportunity tonight. I'd like to provide a brief presentation on Public Works' perspective with regard to both of the proposed ordinances. Let's see. Good. Public Works is responsible for the planning, designing, building, operating, maintaining, and sustaining in perpetuity much of Everett's vital infrastructure. As you're aware, our water system supplies water to a population of over 640,000 residents in Snohomish County. This vital infrastructure requires continual investment, much of this in the form of delivering capital projects. Delivering a capital program is complex, challenging, and a costly endeavor affecting our residents, ratepayers, and wholesale customers. I'd like to state that staff are neither pro-PLA or anti-PLA. Staff by no means are anti-labor. Staff's role and goal is to be for Everett, first and foremost. We endeavor to provide sound information and professional insight to administration and council as they consider and deliberate policy decisions. PLAs are a powerful tool and can be beneficial for the right projects and circumstances. Some of the early PLAs used, as I understand it, were for Cooley Dam here in Washington and Hoover Dam in the 30s and 40s as successful examples of PLAs. Those were indeed the mega projects of their time. There are, however, legitimate concerns about imposing PLAs on all projects, regardless of size, type of work, number of labor hours, or the state of a project in development. There are legitimate concerns regarding the cost, the effect on women and minority business enterprise contractors, open shop contractors, and the potential for reduced competition in our bidding pool. A primary concern that I have regarding the first draft ordinance is the lack of flexibility, and I want to just address that a little bit specifically. Some examples where I believe council and staff both need the flexibility to address individual project concerns. The first being an extreme schedule pressure, and we had a recent example of that with our Port of Everett Combined Sewer Project. We had an extraordinarily tight timeline at the Port of Everett where we had to complete design and construction in a matter of only a few months. And if we didn't have the flexibility to go ahead with that, and had we been required to do a PLA, we simply couldn't have done the project in the time available to us. It simply wouldn't have been possible. In other cases, we have projects that are far along in our, what I'll call our project delivery pipeline. And that's to say that projects have been in planning for many years, it's in design, it may be well toward the completion of design, and there are impacts to reconfigure plans and specifications and how we go forward with that project when a project's essentially ready to go. And those schedule impacts have consequences in delay and cost. On occasion, we may have projects that have very few labor hours and trades, and so it may not be effective use of time to try to negotiate a PLA on a project that has very few labor hours and is mostly equipment. Another concern regarding flexibility is the ability to negotiate a PLA when there is no alternative. We have no other way to proceed, so we have to negotiate it. It weakens our negotiating position. I'd like to use an example, a current project, the Edgewater Bridge replacement. This project design began in 2017. Planning goes back to about 2011. We got multiple federal grants, the first in 2017. The project's been designed under the various federal guidelines that we're required to comply with. It was 90% bid ready in 2021. We hope to bid it at the end of the year, which was during the heat of COVID. We were unable to, the state was unable to timely process our permits, and so we had to delay a season. And so currently that project is at 99% completion in terms of plans and specifications. It's ready to go to bid as soon as we settle some minor right-of-way negotiations with adjoining property owners. And that project's carefully orchestrated with other projects. It's coordinated with the Edgewater Park improvements. I think their funding ordinance was on the agenda tonight. It's coordinated with school district schedules and when our closures are to minimize the impact of school districts. And we have a related project, the Shore Avenue sewer improvements, that also has to be coordinated with it. And so my concern is the lack of ability to be nimble and to be adaptive so that projects that are well along the project pipeline like this one don't have to stop, reconfigure plans and specifications, gain a special federal approval from Federal Highways Administration, which we would be required to do, which also takes time. And so my concern in a project like that is we'll essentially be likely to miss our bid window, which is the optimum time to bid in January, February, which means a season of delay, which means delay to all those other projects as well. And so there are cases where I feel like staff and council need that flexibility and adaptability to do what is needed for a project, rather than to require a PLA with no alternative. We still believe there are direct costs associated with either of the PLA ordinances going forward. We anticipate additional staffing requirements. This is very preliminary. We're looking at probably 3 to 5 full-time equivalents within the city. We're going to do more work on that to try to refine that. Time's been short to prepare. But nonetheless, that's a ongoing impact to our annual budget. We also anticipate additional consultant support in the range of 0.5% to 2% per each PLA project. That percentage may be larger if we apply PLAs to very small projects. So there are 2 proposed ordinances, and I would commend to you the kind of parallel document that was prepared by Tim Benedict and Legal. I think that's a very useful document, and I don't intend to try to get to that level of detail by any means, but I think it'll be helpful for you. But what I see is that there's really great similarity and overlap between these 2 ordinances. Both expanded apprenticeship requirements, which is great. Both expand and facilitate the use of PLAs. What's different between the 2 ordinances and what's different in the newly introduced ordinance is it allows council greater flexibility in decision-making, and it allows staff the opportunity to make a case for unique project situations like the 2 that I just described. It's also important to note that it preserves public interest language from the current 2019 resolution, and that's very similar to what's in the Biden's executive order regarding PLAs regarding public interest. So I have two recommendations, and I'll say these are really tiered. This is our first recommendation would be our preference, and we have a second recommendation as well. So our recommendation would be for you to consider taking no action on December 7th and staying with our current PLA resolution, and we would request that council consider providing staff and administration with a list of the goals that you hope to achieve with the ordinance. Examples being the use of PLAs, improved women and minority business enterprise participation, local hire, apprenticeship, community workforce development, all of those kinds of goals you would like to see in a PLA or other ordinance, and give staff time to work with stakeholders, with outside consultant expert support, and bring back a complete package within 6 months that's intended to achieve those goals. Currently, we have aspirational goals to do a lot of those things, but the ordinances aren't completely filled out to be able to achieve those goals, particularly with regard to women and minority business enterprises and local hire. They simply aren't developed or covered within the ordinances at this time. Our second recommendation, if the first recommendation is unacceptable, would be if council decides to take action on the 7th, staff recommend the new ordinance 221158, as it does give greater flexibility to council for decision-making and for staff in managing projects in the near term. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ryan. And so do we have any questions for Ryan before we go to our public comments on this item? Question? Yes.
It's not a question.
Okay.
I wanted to publicly apologize for, thanks for grimacing, but seriously, for insinuating that I thought you may have given the PowerPoint to the opposition last time. That was absolutely, I just apologize publicly.
Thank you.
And
It's
I
very-
totally trust you in that respect.
Likewise, it's very gracious of you. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Let's go to our,
Just a
City
quick
Attorney Hall.
comment, as you're considering the two options, the two recommendations. One thing that could be accomplished with the recommendation that we take 6 months to slow down and study these things is something that the legal department just hasn't had time to look into yet, is kind of a comparison of the legal vulnerabilities of each of the two options and how to draft whatever, if it's option one, option two, some hybrid to accomplish the goals council desires, to make sure that it's more likely to withstand legal challenge, because these things do get challenged around the country, and bids do get overturned because of the type of PLA that is used. That's something we have outside counsel looking into, and we're just not going to have an answer to that in the next week.
thank you for that. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, comment related to that, I'm on the Snohomish County Board of Health, the board of the Public Health District. And as many of you may know, they're getting set to be absorbed into or created into a new public health department at the county. And since they were going to keep all the employees and all the vehicles and the facilities, it seemed in the earlier parts of this year as if this was going to be a fairly simple thing to do. But it has turned out to be ferociously complicated. That group has been working long hours for months now trying to get this stuff done. And as chair of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, I've worked along with the committee to understand our contracting processes and all the implications of what we do for labor, for women, for minorities, for disadvantaged businesses, for the good of skilled labor in our community, whether union or not, and for the employers who are providing the jobs here. And it is terribly, terribly complicated. I think that's the concern you're hearing from our Public Works Director and from our legal department specifically. This kind of thing normally comes with a lot of background study, and what I found here is that we just haven't done enough here. There are going to be a lot of downstream consequences, and I'd rather we see all those before we vote.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? We'll go to our public comments. Okay.
Could I make one additional comment?
Yes, please, Ryan.
One thing else I wanted to share is that, you know, many of our projects are years in the making, and right now, we're just now starting projects that are what I'll call clean sheet, in that they're starting now with the resolution already in place where we can plan for that at the very beginning. So for example, we just brought forward tonight Plans and Systems Ordinance to start funding for the design of Reservoir 3 replacement. That's the very first step in this design process. And a project like that, where we have the luxury of a couple of years of design, means that if we were to include a PLA on that project, it doesn't impact the project schedule. That work all happens concurrently. And so that's a situation that we are just now beginning, whereas you know, up until now, most all of the projects that have been potentially eligible are projects that were already at various stages in the delivery pipeline.
Thank you. And who do we have signed up to speak on this item?
So first, we will start with Stacy Martin, if she could please come, I'm sorry.
It's all good. Been dealing with that for 51 years.
And state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Yeah, my name is Stacy Martin. I'm the business manager of the Washington and Northern Idaho District Council of Laborers, and in 2019, I was a business manager of Local 292. I want to speak on what was just presented to you. I want to make sure everybody in here understands the project labor agreement. The city owns it. That's never been a secret from 2019 to now. And no presentation that I've seen from the staff or anything else, I know that there have been examples set to the city multiple times. There's been things sent to look at what PLAs could look like. And long jobs that are in the works and being bid, they're not bid yet. So putting a PLA in and having a structure of how the work will be performed, your minority, your women, your apprenticeship standards that you put in there, that can all be put in. That's at bid. You know, I find it extremely interesting, and I want the council to pay attention to. You don't see the AGC here, you don't see IMCO, you don't see any of them. Because like them, we know you guys have very limited jobs that are ever gonna break the $35 million threshold. In 2019, you guys had 17 jobs that were barely over 5 million on the books. The council back then made the decision to lower it from 10 million to 5 million because it was only 17 jobs and you had time to work on it. But what I'm hearing right now is that we haven't spent any time since 2019 to even look at creating a PLA, see how it fits into any projects that are coming. It's just, it won't work. It's gonna be too much work. And I wanna point out something else in the latest ordinance that was brought out, because I like to do some digging. You cited 2 projects that you're very proud of your apprenticeship. You guys come after PLAs saying that there's cost overruns. Well, your evergreen building, the library expansion, from the intent to the final payout, 12.3% cost overrun. That wasn't mentioned. And it also wasn't mentioned that the overall project had 5.3 apprenticeship, because you had nothing to guide the contractor by. The GC sent you guys paperwork in, and you guys can go back and look. The GC was also fined for wage theft on your guys' project. If you go back and you look at your municipal court building, your intent in your affidavit had no apprenticeship on there, and I think the resolution's from '03, so you had 8 years to figure it out. No apprenticeship utilization and an 8% overrun. So I question where the statistics are coming from. I question what you're looking to get a survey on. And did you ask the question on all projects or just one to make the numbers work? Because I can make the numbers work just like anybody else. But these are numbers, especially on the library, you guys signed off on the overrun, but you didn't bring it up in your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Next, we have John Trainer. You could please come to the podium. And again, please state your full name and city and residence. 3
Hello
minutes
again.
to speak.
John Trainer, City of Everett, District 2. First of all, I just want to address something that Mr. Sass said. It's called redlining projects, and if y'all had talked to us, we could have explained that to you. Councilmember Vogely and Fosse know all about it because we've been working with them for a long time. So, if it is the intent to now determine that the scope of city apprenticeship requirements should expand beyond the 2003 resolutions in any way, then let's do that as its own ordinance and stakeholder it the right way. We do this for a living. This is what we do. Nobody's talked to us. The $35 million threshold stated in the briefing 2 weeks ago and now defined by this new competing ordinance, alternative ordinance, pardon me, should not be included. It benefits only contractors, and it's subtractive to this community, and you just don't have projects that big. Further, the $5 million threshold succeeds where the new proposed ordinance does not. It will actually include all of these projects at these thresholds without exception, saving the city money rather than evaluate every single project as they come. The intent is to provide minimum standards to city projects, which, under the 2019 resolution, has never happened. And this new ordinance proposal will do the same thing. Got some extra notes here. This alternative ordinance is a weaker, convoluted version of the solid and stakeholder ordinance brought forward by council members Vogely and Fosse. And procedurally, it comes across as disrespectful to us and to your colleagues on the city council to run a simultaneous alternative without even talking to them or labor. We've been working on this for over a year. We can have PLAs here. This work has already been done. And just like Brother Martin said, these numbers don't add up. So don't vote for this. Don't support this. 58 is performative, and it does nothing for this community.
Thank you, John.
Please hold your applause. This isn't a theater.
If Thomas Bosserman could please come to the podium. Please state your full name and city residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
I'm Dustin Thomas Bosserman. I live in Lake Stevens, but I'm a Starbucks barista in Everett. We just recently unionized, so I'm here in solidarity with the other workers. I don't think I'll be doing any construction projects anytime soon, but I live and work with other people who do, and I serve them coffee. And as far as I'm concerned, just listening to the presentation that I just heard from Public Works, if flexibility is such a primary concern, or being able to, have greater bidding power, I can only imagine he's not particularly happy with either of these bills. I'm sure he would be happy if there were no bills at all on the table to in any way limit the options of the Public Works to conduct these projects however they see fit. That would seem to be the preference of Public Works. It seems to me that there's, as John Trainer said, with regard to the sorry, I apologize. Yeah, it just seems that I apologize again. I'll find my train of thought in just a second. Sure is. 30 seconds. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it just seems to me that if every single project has to come before the council to be approved, that's going to be either an inordinate burden on the council to have to approve each one of these projects individually, or it's going to lead to a situation where they just have rubber stamp things because there's not going to be enough time to address these issues. So that was the point I was trying to remember that John had brought up. So thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Paul Galvin, if you could please come to the podium. And please state your full name, city residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Paul Galvin. I'm currently residing in Marysville, and I really have a great opportunity here. I got all the board members in the same room at the same day. It's fantastic. This is probably my fourth time talking here in Everett, and the first time I've had a full group in front of me, so it's great to have you all here tonight. There was an ordinance that was championed by Cassie Franklin when she came on staff, and it's great, but it's absolutely never been looked at, never been used. PLA discussion, ongoing, developing, many years later. It's lacking, right? So a little bit about me real quick. So some of you weren't here last time. I just want you to know that I'm an underprivileged youth, right? I also happen to be a tribal descendant. 20 years service, military. I also a UBC carpenter. I went through the apprenticeship 4-year program and graduated high school, did some college. So pedigree aside, I'm dressed today. There's a certain uniform on me today. This is a white collar look. It allows me to slip in and out of a white collar situation rather unnoticed. All right? Now, I want you to look over my right and left shoulders real quick and realize that this is my background. I come from the working class. My son lives here in Everett, works in the working class, works in the trades. We develop our work ethic through the ethics of those around us. We develop our political insight through the politicians around us. You have a direct impact on the people that live, breathe, educate, retire in this community. I hope that this discussion brings about the really intriguing conversation that came about when you started talking about roosters. All right? I really hope that you have an opportunity to ask the right questions, because I saw some briefings up here that had absolutely no statistical information that came from a reliable source. It was, I think, we think, and there is a neighbor next to us. There are actually 27 states that have prevailing wage laws, and in many of those areas, PLA language is a part of cities. This isn't a new thing. It's new to Everett. But it's not a new thing. There's plenty of information and statistical data out there for you to pull from. There is no reason that you need to reinvent the wheel in order to come up with a PLA language. You get the opportunity of investing just a little bit of time in the heartbreaking work that workers have gone through to put their voice on the table and say, this is close to fair. Because I tell you what, white-collar contractors aren't talking about us. They're talking about the CEOs and the owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. President Stonecipher, that concludes our comments for item number 20.
Thank you. Thank you. We've heard from our residents and others who are here visiting with us. Do we have any other council discussion or comments, questions? Okay, that concludes our briefing.
Wait, are we going through council comments now?
I'm going to read 21 into the record. This item will come back on the December 7th, and so then we will go to item 21. It's a first reading. I'll read it into the record.
Wait, so are we going past, are we going to speak to this or have any comments?
That's what I just asked, if
Yeah,
anybody had
that's-
any questions or comments.
Yeah, we do.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, great. Then, Councilmember Fossey.
Are you going to go down the line or you want to start with me?
It's you.
It's you.
Okay. I just want to start off by thanking everybody for coming today. Speaking publicly is not an easy feat. I recognize that. I still get caught up at times with a microphone in front of my face. So I just want to say that I appreciate you being here and sharing your stories and taking the time out of your day to speak passionately about things that matter to you and sit through our rooster ordinance issues and stay here. So with that in mind, when Councilmember Vogely and I were working on our original ordinance, and we brought that forward, that was about workers. And that was about the workers in this community. And it was about having predictable labor costs. It was about wanting to have projects with labor standards and not to have things happen like wage theft, and be able to have accurate data to be able to make data-driven decisions in the future. And project labor agreements are a great tool with that in mind, helpful for the community and helpful for decisions in the future. And it felt that when this second ordinance came forward, it did not seem to have those same qualities in mind. And with regard to what was said about the time concerns and constraints from legal, I think that there will be ample time to actually set up templates. We can look at things that Seattle has done with their thresholds at 5 million. We can look at the other cities that have done the same thing and the templates that they have for their PLAs. Again, as Mr. Gallivan said, we are not recreating a new thing. There are so many examples out there from ports and school districts with the same thresholds. And I know change is hard. But this ordinance, I don't believe it was stakeholdered in the same way that the other one was. And so I think it misses the mark. Yeah. That's what I have to say.
Councilmember Vogely.
I also want to say thank you to everyone. Like, wow, you probably saw me, I even cried a little bit. That was amazing. And I know it isn't theater, and it's real life. And thank you for speaking. And you all made a lot of great points that even I hadn't heard yet. And, I've been in on these conversations, so I just want to appreciate that, and I will probably speak more to it later. It's been a long night, but thank you very much.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, I just had, thank you, guys. I'm all business here. Yeah, I know it's long, so I want to make it short here. Just a quick question about these two ordinances. And I know Ryan Sass had brought up the retroactivity of their current projects. Is there a certain point where current projects in line would have to fall under these ordinances? Or would it be, where's the threshold point? I mean, it would, like someone was mentioned, is it after the bidding process is complete? Or before the bidding process? How would it apply to current projects?
I think each one sets forth a timeline regarding applicability. I'd have to go back and read that to tell you exactly what it is, but obviously it doesn't apply to projects that are pretty far down the pipeline, and it would apply to projects like the one Ryan described, the reservoir replacement, that are not down the pipeline at all. And that's also a threshold that you could set. I mean, they're both just proposed ordinances, so you could set whatever trigger date you wanted to set in those ordinances.
Trigger date, that's what I was looking for. Because I didn't read any, I was just wondering.
Sure.
So I'd sure like to hear input after this meeting from those that might be interested in how that would work. Thanks.
Councilmember Ryan.
Attorney Hall, how do we define pretty far down the pipeline?
I think Ryan Sass is the expert on that.
Thank you. With regard to the question, the ordinances that are under consideration, both, not the current resolution, but both the two draft ordinances take effect January 1st, regardless of where a project is. So the concern from staff is just that a project like Reservoir 3 that's, perhaps going to be 50, 60 million and is just starting is relatively straightforward and easy to incorporate. A project like Edgewater Bridge that's at 99% complete design and ready for bid is not so easy to incorporate, and also has the additional federal overlay of federal funds and federal rules and things we have to comply with that all take time. But I believe both ordinances would take effect January 1st and would apply regardless of, where a project is in its development stage.
Councilmember Vogely.
That's accurate. It would begin January 1st, 2023. So there is that. I do hear that the Edgewater Bridge replacement is super far down the line. I know that it was hoping to be bid previous to 2023. It looks like that's not happening, so that could be unfortunate or fortunate, depending on who you speak to. And I'm sure that we could probably figure something out, but a PLA is who's gonna work on it and when and how and the monies that will be paid and the benefits that will be accrued. And no, I am not a director of Public Works, and I don't know all the procurements and everything, but I'm pretty sure that when you've done a whole lot of work, and then you're gonna go and say, and this is how you do it, it's probably gonna be okay in figuring out how to get it done. And there are so many, I've got two of them right here. Community workforce agreements, draft agreements. I think I've just gone all over the place, but I don't think it will be as bad as it is being brought forward as. Okay. And I also want to say to the Starbucks guy, I talk like that a lot. It happens, or I don't talk, so I get it, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Other council comments? Well, I'll just add in, I guess, just a few comments. First of all, thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. I appreciate so much the interest in our meetings. It's nice to have a crowd here. And I'll say that for me, the complexity of this is stuff that I guess maybe I'm not tracking all of it. I've been very supportive of our PLA ordinance that was a resolution, I guess, the first time around. And we've been actually waiting. COVID hit, so of course we didn't have a lot of our projects going forward, but we've been waiting to see how that works. And I think that the things that have come up for me that have muddied the water is just as we look at the cost or the increase or reducing and making it required on all projects, I guess I don't understand the downstream impacts as well. If there are costs to taxpayers with new staffing requirements, project costs, I'm not sure. We've heard from the Minority and Women-Owned Business Association. I think that is a stakeholder group that has not been engaged by either group, to be fair. And I think that they have requested other considerations that we aren't even addressing in either of these ordinances, including mentoring support and some grant support for them to get their feet under them so that they would be in a position that they would be able to bid on projects like this. It's an unfortunate fact in our society that women and minority-owned businesses are definitely the smaller businesses and have a lot of disadvantages. And so from my part, providing support to those businesses and helping them be more capable of bidding for city, municipal, county projects is a win for everyone. And my sense is that the whole project labor agreement draft that could come out if we took some time to work with all the stakeholder groups and get more input and understand, I think from a council perspective, understand the downstream effects of what we're thinking of enacting would be a much more favorable outcome for me. So and when this comes forward, I'll be hoping that we will be looking at a plan to delay at least the implementation so that we can do the hard work that I just think hasn't been done yet with the complexity of what we're doing. So with that, it's getting late, so we will move into more to come on this, obviously, next week. And we will move into our next briefing. Council Bill, this is item 21, Council Bill 2211-59. This is the first reading. An ordinance approving the appropriations of the 2022 revised City of Everett budget and amending ordinance number 3900-22. The third and final reading for this will be on December 14th, and we have Susie Halvin here, our Finance Director. Good evening, Susie. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much. Tonight's amendment is the third budget amendment for 2022, and it will be our last for this year. In total, we'll be amending the budget by just under $17.3 million, which includes $6.5 million for the general government and $10.7 for non-general government funds. Starting with general government amendments, we have 4 grants, all of which have already been accepted by council. This amendment will provide the formal spending authority for those grants. The first grant will provide $325,000 for updating a comprehensive plan. The second is $50,000 for removing derelict vessels. The third provides 90% of the cost of purchasing an air compressor for refilling breathing apparatus, and the fourth will contribute $8,700 to support the city's street tree program. Next, we have an accounting change for the therapeutic court program. It was initially in the general fund, but after review, accounting determined that it would be more appropriate to account for it in our criminal justice fund, 156. This amendment will allow us to make this change. Jail costs continue to run ahead of budget. We amended the jail budget by $700,000 in budget amendment number 2, as you probably recall. But since then, costs have continued to escalate, both due to the number of inmates and housing days. We're recommending that the budget be amended by an additional $200,000 to get us through the end of the year.
Susie, can I ask, have the rates that were being charged by the county for jail stays changed in a way that we weren't expecting, or is it just the volume?
It's the volume.
Volume's driving.
Of activity.
Thank you.
We have a few amendments tonight that are being generated by changes in accounting rules. And the first one is requiring us to budget differently for the federal reimbursements we receive for left when retiree prescription costs. Previously, we posted that revenue directly to the general fund, and now they are indicating that we have to, first we posted it directly to the pension funds, and now we are having to post it to the general fund first and transfer it to pension funds. And we actually need budget authority for those transfers. And then the last on this slide is the fire department has been experiencing more retirements than anticipated this year, and an additional $135,000 is needed to cover those bank buyouts. The fire department also needs funding to cover an additional training academy this year, as well as a fair amount of makeup training that they have had to do due to the lack of training opportunities during the pandemic. The next amendment increases the facilities budget to reimburse transit for hours worked by 2 transit maintenance technicians at city-owned buildings other than Everett Station or other transit buildings between July and December of this year. Regarding Jetty Island, the original budget only included the cost of the city's day laborers. The Port of Everett is actually covering the cost of the ferry service, which will pass through the city. This amendment will appropriate the funds received from the port and provide expenditure authority to make payment to Argosy for that ferry service. The city has been awarded $40,000 from in a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts for the land acknowledgement project. The original budget for the project was $100,000, but after working with artists, it was determined that in order to get the kind of project that the city is really desiring and envisioning for that an additional funding is required. And so this amendment increases that budget by $100,000 for a total of $200,000. In budget amendment number 2, we increased the motor vehicles budget for the increase in fuel costs this year. And this amendment provides additional resources to the engineering, animal services, police, fire, facilities, and streets departments to cover the higher fuel cost in their funds. Earlier this year, the city received nearly $600,000 in PPE from Snohomish County Department of Emergency Management. And even though there was no cost to the city for these supplies, governmental accounting rules require that we record an expenditure, and this amendment will provide that budget authority for that transaction. That same concept applies to the radio equipment that we receive from Snow 911. Even though the radios were paid for with that countywide sales tax, and we receive them from Snow 911 at no cost to the city, we are required to record an expenditure associated with that, and that is the $4.3 million. And there is a new Governmental Accounting Standards Board standard that changes how we account for leases, requiring an upfront expenditure entry. So we need an amendment to the budget of $437,000 in order to make that expenditure entry and comply with the standard by the end of this year.
Mike?
Maybe this is a question more of an engineer, from an engineer than an accountant, but if we are required to list those things as an expenditure, then is there a matching income line somewhere, or? Okay.
Yes, we actually book a revenue for that.
Okay.
And an expenditure. Governmental accounting is a little bit different in that, as I'm sure Council President would know, we do differently in private, but it's unique to our form of accounting.
I just didn't want, I wanted to make sure it didn't disappear somewhere.
Oh, no, we always have to have both sides, right?
Okay, good, thank you.
For non-general government proposed amendments, we start with $340,000 for CIP 3 to fund the Clark Park gazebo renovation, Forest Park spray pad renovation project, and the Lowell Riverfront project renovation. And like fire, we also had a higher than expected number of retirements in EMS. This amendment will provide the spending authority to cover the additional bank buyouts. And we have the EMS side of the Snow 911 radio equipment transaction in the amount of $535,000. We have a few amendments for the Criminal Justice Fund, including the other half of moving the therapeutic court program from the general fund. We have an $84,000 grant for tech upgrades at the court, a $38,000 grant for ballistic shields and equipment for police, and the implementation of the automated traffic safety camera program, which will be pending contract approval. The Everett Park Garage will be moving to an automated system for parking. A budget amendment in the amount of $326,000 is needed to account for the equipment and closing costs. The storm on November 4th blew down a netting barrier at Legion Golf Course. The cost to replace the netting and poles is estimated to be $311,000, and an amendment is necessary to appropriate the necessary funding. Community Development is receiving a grant from Snohomish County to support the Behavioral Health Case Management Project. This project includes the addition of a full-time case management coordinator who will manage a contract for community service-based case managers. On October 5th, Council passed Resolution 7817 in support of several projects to be funded by the city's ARPA award. This amendment appropriates the funding necessary to carry out those projects. It is anticipated that we will come back next year in Budget Amendment number 1 and reappropriate all of the unspent funds associated with these projects. And the amendment amount also matches the amount that council approved in the resolution. And the last slide for Budget Amendment number 3 provides the rest of the list of approved ARPA projects from Resolution 7817. And that concludes Budget Amendment number 3.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments? Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you. Slide number 8, I think I missed when you said, let's see, reclass therapeutic court program. My question is, from which fund did this move from?
We originally were accounting for it in the general fund, but because of the nature of the work and the restricted revenue associated, it's more appropriate to account for it in our criminal justice fund.
Okay, thank you. And the slide number 9, general government special projects, behavioral health case management project support. Is this somebody or something we talked about already that I totally know about? I'm just blanking on.
Yes, it's been presented by Julie Willie.
Okay. Okay. That's all, I think.
Any other questions? Angie, did we have anyone signed up to speak on item 22, the budget hearing?
No, we did not, just 23.
23, okay, that's fine, I want to make sure. Okay, this comes back before us on the 14th. And then we move to budget hearing number 2 for the 2023 proposed operating budget. This is item number 22 on our agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So at the first budget hearing, we had a number of questions that staff had to follow up on. And we did provide council with an email with responses to those questions. I believe it was on the 23rd. If council wishes, I can summarize the responses to those questions tonight, or if council is satisfied with the information we provided, we can move directly into council discussion and additional questions. Other than that, I don't have any further presentations for tonight.
Thank you. Any questions on the responses that we received from the finance? Thank you. Any other questions about the,
Just, can you
Councilmember
do the
Bobley.
bullet point again for the answers, the questions? Sorry.
Absolutely.
Would you please summarize the questions that we asked that you answered in that email that I've printed out but I don't have with me?
Yes, of course. There was a small list of questions that we needed to follow up on, as I said. One of them had to do with what is the net cost of our COPS grant positions in 2023, and the answer to that is $440,000. Another question had to do with animal shelter funding and how we were covering the costs, particularly relating to our partner cities in Snohomish County. The answer to that is, we did have, there was a disruption in activity because of the pandemic, and they're still working through recovering from that, although things have gotten better. So in 2021, we were able to cover with revenue generated by the shelter, whether it was for fees or partner contributions, per animal contributions. We were able to cover all but $381,000 of those costs. The per animal fees in 2021, the per animal fees that our partner cities in Snohomish County are paying the shelter for intake of animals. In 21, it was $220. This year it's $235, and next year it's going to be $250. They're making progress this year towards bringing the net cost of the shelter to zero, which is really astounding. I mean, they've really done a lot of hard work, innovative programs, trying to get to that level. And they're hoping that by the end of this year, they should be pretty close to being there. So congratulations to the shelter. Another question was about 1% for the arts, and we do not have any projects on deck for 2023, and the ending fund balance is we estimate will be about $123,000, and so that will continue to be contributed to by our projects, our public works projects that are eligible for that, until another project is identified for that funding. In terms of our art collection, there was a question about where our where the art pieces that were being stored in the Comback building were moved to, and they are currently being stored on the second floor of the municipal building next door. And that would include the Guy Andersons. And then the question on lodging tax grants and what our timing is on that. And staff expects to meet with the council president at some point in December and work in early next year to get the grants out and the process going. And then there was also a question regarding the Public Safety Advocacy Committee, which was responded to by the mayor personally, describing the program and providing related documents. And that.
Thank you. That was a good summary. Any other questions about the proposed budget? Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. Since I was not here for the initial meeting, everybody can thank me for adjourning about an hour earlier than it would have otherwise, but I have some questions to follow up on. And I'm not as organized as I should be tonight, so apologize if they seem kind of random or whatnot. But so did listen to the presentation. Thank you for all the hard work on it. So under Fund 32 for the fire department, you had mentioned that there was an increase in $684,000 in overtime included in the budget. So I was curious what the current vacancy rate is at the fire department, and if there should be an additional firefighter or two to help with that overtime cost, or just kind of how that reconciliation's working.
They have had some turnover this year, as I mentioned earlier during the amendment. I almost wish you had asked me about police vacancies, because that's top of mind. And I don't think that they have a large number of vacancies right now, but I can follow up with an answer on that.
They've had a higher number of vacancies than previously experienced, specifically in EMS and paramedics. And so they have had more overtime, but this is a challenge that we've had for years in the fire department of kind of excessive overtime. And so we've been looking at different things that we are doing in negotiations around contracts, around how we support kind of sick leave utilization and things to help alleviate overtime of when folks are leaving the fire department, so that they're not just using their sick time and then other people have to use overtime to fill those vacancies. So we're working through that together with labor and administration, the chiefs. But yeah, so it is not an unusual problem, as council members that have been on the council for a longer period of time have seen that level of overtime in a fire department. But we have been working for some time to address it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see, next I wanted to mention the Muni Arts Fund 112. I had asked for a list of department requests, and included in that list was additional money for the 4th of July parade. So, excuse me, not the 4th of July. I did not say parade. Do not, I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. There's additional ask for money for the festival to meet the increased cost for the fireworks show, which is now at $90,000 for the show. So just as a mention, an idea balloon out there is maybe that cost is starting to get approached too high for an event. And so I just wanted to put a little flag on that maybe we could reconsider ways that we can celebrate the 4th of July in the future. Everett. Salty Sea Days. Everett Transit Fund 425. I didn't see it in here, and maybe I'm missing it in a different space, but I didn't see a reflection of the Move Ahead Washington dollars coming in. Would that be with Everett Transit, or is that a different fund altogether? Or is that not coming in the door yet?
So we can get back to you on that. Often the Move Ahead Washington, there are different grants and things that will be coming through, and so those will always come through with budget amendments. But I just want to make sure that staff have time to get back to you on that. But likely any dollars that we are eligible for might need to be allocated in a budget amendment.
So I think when we passed the free fare for youth, there was a guarantee of like 16 million a year or whatever it was, or 16 million over the course of a number of
I
years.
think we're
so-
eligible for that, but we're not guaranteed a recipient of it. So with the Move Ahead Washington program, we have to provide free fares to youth to be eligible for any grant, but that doesn't automatically mean that we're going to receive those grant funds.
And if I can add,
Please.
it is our practice that we do not budget for grants that we don't have a signed contract for. So that's why, as you've probably noticed, every budget amendment that I bring forward throughout the year always has a whole slew of grants in it, in addition to other things. But it has always been our policy and practice not to count on something we don't have a signed contract for.
Okay. Notes. And then in the presentation, you had mentioned, from a couple weeks ago, you had mentioned that there was an increase of a 281,000 in overtime, but there's also increase in bus operators that are included. So I was curious if the overtime might balance out with the additional FTEs that were being included.
Well, and that would be a question that I would want to have Tom Hinkson respond to. It's really directly related to operations of the transit department.
Great.
So we can certainly have him respond to that question.
Sure, that'd be great, thanks. Back up a couple. And then there was also some questions about process, and I was a little unclear for a few process questions as well. I was hoping for some help with. So I see with this budget, there's a total of 8.2 FTEs for general government, 5.6 for non-gen, and so for 13.8 FTEs total. Is that correct? Sounds about right?
For which?
For the budget, for the city?
More than 13.8.
Yeah.
Oh.
You mean additions?
Additions, yeah.
A lot more than 13.
Sorry.
Okay. So, actually, if you're looking, and I'm looking between the 2022 original budget, which has been amended, and the 2023 original budget, there is an addition of 17 general government positions to the general government departments, and 10.7 to non-general government departments, for a total add of 28 FTEs. The total number of FTEs proposed for 2023 is 1,209.64.
Great, thank you. So of the current proposed new FTEs, are there any of those positions that are currently filled?
Some of them represent positions that were added mid-year, but since we are comparing from the original budget to the new budget, they appear as increases for 2023. So they probably, a couple of them would have been filled already, but some of them not. Some of them are new, some of them were added this year, mid-year. And, if you want a list of the mid-years as opposed to the new, we can provide that to you.
Sure, that'd be great. Yeah, I think I get confused at when there's, I know some of these positions, like with Everett Transit, are contingent on council approval of budget and approval of the funding to fill those FTEs. So I get confused when there's new FTEs that are filled, but then council approves the funding for it afterwards. So I'm not sure when it comes before council to approve FTEs. It seems like some get filled before, some get filled after the fact. So I'm just not clear what the process is on how that happens.
Yeah, so sometimes part of my job as mayor and kind of the CEO of the city is I have to make adjustments throughout the year based on the business needs, where the workflow is happening, what changes have to be made in operations in the multiple departments we have that require additional or different FTEs than we have. And so, just like any other business, we make those decisions throughout the year, and we bring them back to council through budget amendments. And then when we present the new budget to council in this, like we're doing now, we have all of those new FTAs and FTEs incorporated into that. It's just kind of if we weren't doing that, it would be impossible for us to adjust throughout the year to address the needs that change pretty dramatically in the business of running the city. So you get budget amendments throughout the year, but then you get a brand-new list of positions when we present the budget to you. Most of the positions that you are getting in this budget are positions that we're adding back that were cut during the pandemic. Yeah.
Go for it. Councilmember Vogler?
I am really appreciative of these questions, and I just would like to really take a look at the charter, section 4, and kind of figured this out because I'm having the same style of questions with process and how it works. So I'll leave it at that.
Let me add on to that. So Susie, as I understand it though, if the budgetary authority exists for salary expense, if you decide to fill one type of position versus another type of position, as long as it's within that department, administration has the authority to do that. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah, so, but if you were to say, hey, we don't have this communications person in this department, but we're gonna add it over in this other department where we think the work's really happening, then that would come before council.
Through, if the other department did not have sufficient budget authority to
Yes.
pay for that position, yes, it would be we need an amendment.
An amendment, yeah.
To increase the budget
Okay,
authority.
but within a department's budget, your staffing budget is in some ways rather fluid. If people leave and you have budget authority, you can hire a different type of position within that department. Okay, thank you.
Addition to that,
Yes.
which I think I brought up last time, is how do we get our departments? And when are they approved by council and/or the charter? Which isn't, you don't have to answer right now, but it's still a question that I have.
Well, I can go ahead and take a stab at it. So it generally happens in two ways, and when you're talking about departments, I'm assuming you're talking about the funds as well, the funds that go along with the departments.
Correct, like for instance, 018 and 022 and.
So, yes, so it can happen one of two ways. We can bring forward an establishing ordinance that is a standalone that just seeks to establish a new fund and council, for council's approval. Or if it's happening as part of the budget process, it would be established through the original budget ordinance for that year. So two ways to do it. And we've used both methods.
Which brings, if I may.
Yes.
Which brings Paula's mid-year question together with my, how do you figure out departments, and our new engagement director, because it's not the same department. So there would be no authority until approved, but already it's filled.
So we had budget authority, but now we're asking for the authority to create the position. So filling that position was fully within my authority as mayor to use the budget that was already allocated by council to spend those dollars. And now we're asking for your approval for the department with this budget.
Okay, I'm gonna rewatch this and really try to figure this out, because it is a conundrum for me. Thank you.
Any other questions for Susie? Thank you. We are going to go on to our last briefing of the night. Item 23, this council bill is a first reading, and so I'll read it into the record. Council Bill 2211-60, first reading, adopt an ordinance establishing an Everett Station District Alliance Business Improvement Area. And the third and final reading on this is scheduled for December 14th, which everyone better eat your Wheaties that day, because I can tell that's going to be a big agenda. Before we get Mr. Howell up here from the Station District Alliance to brief us, I'll ask Angie, do we have public comments on this item? I believe we do.
We do. We have two individuals here in the chambers. If Liz Stenning could please come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, I'm on. My name is Liz Stenning. I live in Lake Forest Park, and I'm the executive director for the Downtown Everett Association. So thank you. I'm still here. Thank you for you still being here. So the establishment of a BIA in Everett Station District is long overdue. We support the creation of the Everett Station District Business Improvement Area, and that their stakeholders experience a vibrant and welcoming place to visit and do business. On behalf of Downtown Everett stakeholders, I can attest to the success of our 25-plus year BIA. As you're aware, cleaning services are one component of the Downtown BIA, and as a result, Downtown Everett is an inviting place for visitors, residents, and office workers. The proposed BIA ordinance for the Station District requires that the Everett Station District Alliance manage all aspects of assessment funding, including invoicing and collections. We are not in support of this aspect of the ordinance and ask that it be omitted from the ordinance. It's not considered a best practice for the contracted organization to manage invoicing and collections. In Washington State, there are 21 BIAs, and to our knowledge, local governments handle all aspects of billing and legal matters for these districts. Cities and governments employ attorneys and finance technicians, whereas small organizations like ours operate these BIAs, and we do not have this in-house expertise. I really want to acknowledge the collaborative and productive partnership our organization has with the City of Everett. It's this relationship that allows our organization to achieve goals and grow our downtown programs. So we urge the city to establish the Station District BIA and continue the current billing practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. And if Patrick Hall would please come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes to speak.
I'm Patrick Hall. I live in Everett. I am the board president of the Downtown Everett Association. If I'm a few seconds late, I hope you'll grant me some grace. The Downtown Everett Association supports the creation of the Everett Station District Alliance. We are opposed to the part of the ordinance that requires BIA organizations to do the billing. We believe in BIAs because they are based on partnerships between the city, the property owners, the BIA Association, and the community. They're a very economical way for the city to provide a clean, safe, and vibrant environment in a business district without having to shoulder the entire cost themselves. It's like a big potluck. Everybody contributes something, and everybody shares in the bounty. I think everybody knows that the DEA provides clean team services in downtown Everett and also manages the Everett Park Garage. What many people may not know is that we also run an ever-expanding revitalization program based on our status as a Washington Main Street community. Main Street is a comprehensive economic development program designed specifically for revitalizing older and historic downtowns like Everett's. It teaches us to do what we can with what we have. Let me give you one example of how this works. For years, we heard from business owners and citizens alike that they really wanted us to revive holiday lighting in downtown, which would attract shoppers, provide better security, and generally improve holiday cheer. So in 2020, one of our volunteer committees pitched an idea to the city and asked for their support. Traffic engineering helped us to design a scheme that was both beautiful and practical. We then cobbled together $11,000 in personal contributions from our own volunteer board members and used most of it to purchase 8 large snowflakes and 4 wreaths for the quadrangle at Hewitt and Colby. The city took the time to install them, and off-season storage was provided free of charge by Downtown Everett Storage. People loved the new lights, as well as the flower program we had rescued earlier that year when the city discontinued it. This success enabled us to attract more donations from the community, so we purchased 10 more snowflakes the following year. The city again took the time to recommission power and install the new snowflakes down 3 blocks of Colby. The response from the public was an outpouring of glee, and more donations were received. 2022 would be more challenging. All the gooseneck lamps which hold snowflakes had already been used up, and the city no longer had time to do new installations. We consulted with the IBW, and they put us in touch with Valley Electric. We came up with a plan to put 2 more snowflakes on Colby just north of Everett Avenue and light all the trees on that block. Valley decided to donate their time to the project. They did $15,000 worth of work for us for free, pulling wire under the street and up into street lights so that we could light trees from above where they're more difficult to vandalize. We then spent $7,000 of donated money to pay a local contractor to string lights in the trees. I'm almost done. The result is what you see today, a single block pilot project for tree lighting that we hope to expand every single year using the same kind of resourcefulness. This is just one project among many, one small example of what the DEA brings to the community. We are so much more than just a clean team. We have brought a big hot steaming casserole to that potluck. BIA billing is one of the city's many side dishes that are better prepared by you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick, and President Stonecipher. That concludes our public comments.
Thank you. And so now I think we'll have Brock Howell, Executive Director of the Everett Station District Alliance. Good evening, Brock. Thank you for waiting for us.
I'm going to have to have more potluck analogies. That's great. Thank you, Council President Stonecipher and council members and mayor. I'm again Brock Howell, Executive Director, Everett Station District Alliance, here to do the formal presentation and briefing on the proposed ordinance to establish the BIA for our neighborhood. There's 3 key features that we want to make sure that you remember. This focus on critical needs, is right sized to our stronger supporters, and it's a place to start and grow from. So what have we been doing? We aren't 25 years old. We began meeting as property business owners and community members back in 2015 and incorporated in 2017. We've been holding quarterly volunteer cleanups, and I'm thankful at least 2 council members here have been able to participate in them. We helped advocate for establishing no overnight and 4-hour parking restrictions that our property owners wanted, and I think you heard a few weeks ago from Mr. Nicesetter about the benefits of that. As well as the combination of the no sit, no light ordinance and the pallet shutters going into place and helping to advocate for those to go in place, and he also wasn't happy about that. We've been holding a quarterly Smith Avenue Safety Forum. We are excited about a mural project funded through the Forward Everett grant program that we hope to have the murals up this coming year. And we've established an online business directory. And in terms of preparation, this has been a lot of our focus, a lot of community engagement, 3+ studies and reports. This year we've been launching the Convergence Collaborative, which I presented on in October. And obviously Light Rail is coming, so we've been engaging in that project. But what we have heard over and over from our property owners is it's not safe enough, it's not clean enough, we need to do more, we need the resources to make it happen, and we're doing this on a shoestring budget. So, we did come before council in 2019, and that started with a consultant and a key group of property owners working together to come up with a proposal. We had built signed support, and we ultimately had a vote of council in support, but there was an amendment to the map, and that required a 15-day delay, and then that threw things into a little bit, the whole process in a bit of a tizzy. We recollected affidavits that indicated we had support for a regrouped proposal, and we're about to bring it, and then the pandemic hit. And we did not feel that was a good time, given the economic situation, to bring it back before council. So we put a big pause on it. In 2021, our board of directors discussed this extensively. we conducted an online survey, which I'll go over with a bit with our private property owners to see what their support level is, what they would like to see in a new proposal. And they approved a draft proposal for taking out to our property owners. So in 2022, we took that proposal out to our property owners, one by one, had conversations. We notified all property owners that this proposal was out there and we were weighing in support. As of June, we had hit our 60% threshold mark of enough property owners representing 60% of the estimated assessment were in support, and so we submitted it to the administration for their consideration, hopefully that you would take it up. And in November, you took it up, and now we're on a path, hopefully, towards December 14th. So what we heard in 2021 was first to right-size the BIA to prove the utility and the effectiveness of the BIA. Start with a smaller budget, start with smaller boundaries where the strongest support is. This also was reflected in Council's own statements back in part of the 2019 process of really wanting to focus where the strongest support was. In terms of specific programming, safety was a #1 concern, as well as cleaning. Parking issues were a little bit lower, but over 50% of the respondents were supportive of addressing parking issues. And beautification and enhancement programming was also ranked well. Oops. So we took to heart of focusing services and the BIA on the property, on the areas of the neighborhood that had the strongest support. And we relied on the 2019 data to start in drawing our boundaries. So that's where we started from. We were under the kind of the assumption that if property owners outside those boundaries wanted to join, we could figure that out later to join in, but we wanted to start with those narrow boundaries to start with. So the map here is where we started in 2019. Just Council President Stonecipher asked of where we started. In this version, we have 4 distinct areas, each with a coherent connection within their area. And so that's the northwest, northeast, southeast following the railroad tracks and Smith Avenue, and then southwest, which is really focused on South McDougal Street. And those are 4 separate areas that each need services and have unique challenges to their areas. But individually, really, we want to be able to provide services if they were the only BIA as part of the area. And so we needed to put them together. There's also, within those gaps, some notable public properties that are not the cities that would not be subject to the BIA regardless. So I'm just going to put those up there right now, which is Sound Transit, the counties, Snohomish PUD, and WashDOT on the south end. I just kind of drew the WashDOT in on the bottom. So our 2019 budget was almost $500,000 with about almost 60% dedicated towards the Safe and Clean program. We also had a substantial portion on some advocacy work around land use and things that would be coming up before Sound Transit and the city. The 2023, I'm calling the 2023 proposal here since it would start in 2023, significantly reduced to $313,000 and $500. 73% of the budget is dedicated towards the Safe and Clean program with none of the advocacy. I'm going to go over this, each of the safety programs in a moment here. So, and you'll see the budget again. So first, safety, we asked specifically what were folks interested in. And there was strong support for safety patrols, especially at night, as well as daytime ambassadors who could monitor for safety and connect people in need with social services while also picking up litter along the way. And there was also some support for making a physical investments in the safety of the neighborhood, like lighting and security cameras potentially. Cleaning, there was strong support for picking up what people don't like to see on the street, picking up needles, waste, and just basic litter. Removing graffiti and applying anti-graffiti coatings to buildings or columns, and doing major trash cleanups. We do get major pileups in our neighborhood, and so having some funding dedicated for that. So our proposal has a few components based off of that input. Nighttime security patrols, which would be contracted vehicle patrols at night, so that way we have additional eyes on the street as much as we can throughout the night. Second is have daytime ambassadors, neighborhood ambassadors that are, walking, maybe biking, monitoring and patrolling for safety concerns, connecting people to social services when engaging with them, cleaning up litter and graffiti as they go, and monitoring for parking violations. I'll go into that in a moment, why that matters. It's not city parking exactly. Major spot cleanup efforts, there'd be some funding for that, as well as some funding for physical improvements like lighting cameras and potentially public trash cans. On the parking front, this actually came from our work in 2019. We are a light industrial neighborhood with a lot of unimproved right-of-way next to businesses. And in that situation is the adjacent business's responsibility for managing the parking. And we have experienced where there's not a lot of control over that parking, and it could use some standardization. And there's potentially an opportunity to use neighborhood ambassadors to help enforce it, or at least monitor when there are violations and notify the business owner to take action. Finally, enhancement program. There is really strong support in our survey for bringing back the Wednesday Farmers Market, and it's not like we're going to, the Wednesday Farmers Market, to a large extent, can be self-sufficient, but we will do what we can to help make sure it comes back, as well as supporting other events and making physical improvements like murals and street pole banners. I don't know if we're going to be able to do snowflakes, but that kind of idea for enhancement. So going back to the budget, there's $230,000 for a Safe and Clean program, the vast majority of which is dedicated towards private vehicle patrol at night and daytime ambassadors. There is, within the parking category, $10,000 for staff time, and so that'd be married into the daytime neighborhood ambassadors as well to be able to make that $115,000 total on that category. Some minor funding here for major spot cleanups and trash bins and lighting. Funding for enhancement is $20,000. Promotion, communication, and economic development is $15,000. And accounting and management is $30,000. This reflects, so that's about 9.7% of our total budget, so under a 10% threshold there. We do have a little bit of funding that's dedicated towards some initial startup costs, that some of which is anticipated, some of which is not unanticipated as to what it's going to be, but we hope to have it. And finally, there is an estimated amount, or really a guess, to be frank, about what our uncollected assessment rate will be. And I believe this is a little bit higher than what Downtown Everett Association has, but we are, of course, a new BIA, so we are accounting for that. So total budget, not accounting uncollected assessments, is $313,500. The rates, so it's 50 cents per $1,000 of land value plus 4 cents per square foot of the lot acreage for each parcel in the neighborhood that is a privately owned parcel. And then the city of Everett's parcels would be considered also part of be considered subject to the assessment as well. This is in the range of other BIAs, and I'll just point out Ballard's BIA, for example, here. They have 52 cents per square foot and 12 cents per $1,000. Theirs is not on their industrial lands by and large. If you know Ballard, it's more on their, like Ballard Avenue Road. But you can compare it to downtown Everett's, U District's, and downtown Seattle's for similar numbers. There is one land use that would be treated differently, and that is hotels. And instead of it being based on land value, it'd be based on the gross square footage of the buildings itself. And it's a similar rate, but not an exact rate to the market value. And that was a request of the hotels. They felt more comfortable with that approach. The land values are all based off of 2022 data, and then inflated using an inflation factor of up to 5%, no more than 5%. And so the land value is 2022, and we would each year just base it off of that moving forward. We would not adjust to 2023 assessor numbers, 2024 assessor numbers. It just is that base number. It's a 5-year program, and then we would have to seek renewal after that. I think this is my last slide. So accountable, this starts small. It is right-sized to the strongest supporters. It requires renewal after 5 years. There is a ratepayer board. It would be approved by the city, only comprised of property owners who are ratepayers. Must be representative of the diversity of land uses and sizes. It meets quarterly. Establishes the budget, which is also small and right-sized, approved annually by the board, the ratepayers at the annual meeting, and by the city. And we will have performance metrics. And I got actually one more slide. Support level. We have 30 private property owners who have indicated their support. That's 69.1% of the assessed value of the area. This does not include the city properties. This is just the private property. Based off of our last go-around in 2019, we were looking at our strongest supporters, but there still are some people who are still both outside and inside of our boundaries, and so we've eliminated some of their property, but not all of their property in the process, and then there's some others who expressed opposition that round, and we haven't necessarily heard from them this time, but we would expect them to not be supportive this time, just on that go-round. So that's about 8. I say there's another 21 property owners not engaged, but actually the math would be 19 here who we haven't heard from. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Questions, Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, I'm sure you've calculated the actual cost of the city's assessment?
Yeah, so it's right about $74,900. That's a combination between Everett Transit and Everett Public Works. They're not quite 50-50, but they're pretty close between those two. And obviously, there's very large parcels in the neighborhood of Everett Public Works' campus and Everett Transit, obviously. What you're getting out of that is for every $1 you are investing here, you're getting $3 back of an investment in the neighborhood and the city to be able to, because the property, without this BIA, we wouldn't have the investment of our additional investment from our other property owners. So we're getting that additional revenue coming.
Yeah. Another question for you. Have you calculated the costs with, if the city was going to process the tax collections? I mean, has there been some sort of agreement or ask or proposal? I mean, we collect for the downtown association, so is there a standard cost or a process we go through that? Have you reached out? Is that an option? I'll keep asking. Is that an option on your half? I'll shut up.
So the request for the city, for ESDA to send out the billing notice and then to collect the revenue and deposit the money in the bank account, and then to manage that as a separate account, which technically, even if we did it, it would be a city account under just basic law. I'm not sure if it's state law or which, but so that'd be a city account. We did not propose that. That was a request from the city to do that. And so I will leave that to the city administration to respond as to how much it would cost.
So the suggestion was not for the DEA or the ESDA to actually perform that work themselves, but to rather hire an outside private accounting firm to perform that function. And the entire, the reason behind that is actually it's staffing constraints. My staff processing accounts receivable is at beyond capacity, and I just cannot assign several hundred more accounts to them. The BIA managing that process is really labor intensive. They send out the initial billing at the first of the year, but then they send out monthly statements every month, and it's really the phone calls as well. So a lot of phone calls come in from property owners. They either don't know what the BIA is, and so our staff is in the position where they have to explain why they're getting this bill and what it's for, or they're very angry about the bill, quite frankly, and they just don't want to pay it, and they want to express that anger to somebody, so it falls on our staff to deal with those phone calls, or they have a delinquency and they want to have their late fees, interest waived off the bill. So it does generate quite a bit of work. There are about just under 400 accounts for the DEA, BIA. Recently, we also implemented a fire inspection fee, which requires our accounts receivable. That's, of course, an internal process for a city. It's not for an external organization. And that's created another huge workload. So in the last couple of years, we doubled the size of our downtown BIA, and we added a whole other city process billing to this one staff person's plate. And so if we are going to take on another organization, we absolutely are going to have to add an FTE in order to come. So either we add an FTE, or we can look at hiring an outside private accounting firm to do that work.
Can I add on to that, Susie? How does it work if you have a delinquency then? If they were to be doing it on their own, or some outside accounting firm hired by the Alliance, who puts the lien? Because those result in a lien against the property. So how would that work? They can't do that. We can do that.
Right, and it's actually not a lien, but it's a foreclosure. So we would start a foreclosure process once we are advised by the accounting firm for the organization. And we've started those processes a couple of times over the years for some DEA property owners, and the property owners have managed to satisfy the bill at the 9th hour.
Yeah, of course.
10th hour, right. So we've never actually followed through with the whole foreclosure process.
Okay, thank you.
And I think the point of this, sorry, just to dovetail on Susie's comments, and Lori, I believe, sent an email to council either yesterday or this morning to this regard, but it really is just a policy question. The direct contribution that the city makes, both to the DEA and as the proposed BIA for the ESDA, is one cost. But I think it's important for the public to understand transparently there are additional costs the city bears, both in terms of financial staff capacity as well as our legal department's capacity to manage these organizations going forward. So I think the point here is just to daylight. There's the direct cost of the contributions the city makes to the general fund, public works, and transit, but there's also indirect costs to our staff that will need to be accounted for, and we would bring a budget amendment back to add capacity to make sure we can cover that, should council choose to keep that responsibility on the city's shoulders.
Thank you. Council President, Vice President Toohey.
Question, I'm following on that. Brock, on your budget, you have $25,000 for accounting and management. Was that where you took into consideration the billing? It looks like it says billing and collections.
Yes, and I think probably the version you got was was not the updated
Was it
version
30?
that I sent slightly just a few minutes after that one, which was 30,000 for that
Right.
number. And we would have to put in that cost into that line item of $30,000. We are obviously concerned about our ability to cover it with the 30,000. And so that would be something that we need to figure out.
But on your budgeting here, you do call out billing and collections under that 30,000.
Yes, yes, because that is the line item within which it would come.
And 30,000 would
Yep.
cover that?
We are not entirely sure at this point. Yeah.
I think more the question is, what is the 30,000 for?
Yeah, so the administration, part of a small portion of my salary, as well as accounting for the BIA.
So not really the billing then and collections?
It was not originally intended to cover billing and collections.
Because
no.
that's
That's right.
what your slide said, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah. If we have to cover the cost, that is where the cost is going to come from. Yep.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
One kind of technical question, maybe legal, and one policy opinion, I guess. The providing services for those who want it, if property owners outside the boundaries would like to receive services, the ESDA could establish a direct contact to provide services. I guess by direct contact, you mean some sort of arrangement where they would unofficially pay and join the alliance and receive services?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the BIA itself, but we could extend our service to those who would like to receive the services, right? So that'd be a separate service that ESDA itself could provide.
And I guess in terms of our establishing ordinance is that I just don't want to run into a rock in the road, down the road, if that, Mr. Hall, can you tell me if I'm way off base on that, or is it no concern?
Well, I'd hate to say off the cuff that it's no concern whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think that it's something that is not precluded by the establishing ordinance.
Okay.
It would be, done by contract between ESDA and their, whoever's providing a particular service, right, to provide to these folks, and I don't think.
So ESDA is an entity then formed by the ordinance, but it can contract. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we didn't get a surprise where we were doing the right thing, but finding that it wasn't actually allowed.
I should clarify, like the DEA is I think they're a 501c9, 6. We're a 501c3 organization. We're already established. And the BIA is actually a part of the city itself. It is an ordinance creating an account in the city. And so that sets up a fiduciary, kind of an account within which the city selects a vendor, which has kind of been selected as a preferred vendor through the ordinance of the ESDA. And so then the fund, there will be a contract between the city and ESDA to provide the services of the BIA.
Okay. Makes sense. I just didn't want to get surprised by something that we could fix beforehand. And then with respect to policy, on the accountable slide, since the city would be establishing this and becomes a responsible entity, it seems like accountability, you talk of the last line about performance reported at an annual ratepayer meeting. I'm guessing that it would be a good idea if there was an annual report to the council as well, just so that we stay on track, and that be maybe part of the establishing ordinance, so that there is that chain of accountability for us as a taxing and collection authority.
I believe already in the ordinance is a report to the city of the annual performance.
Great. I'll read that in more detail then. Thanks. That's all I have.
Any other questions? Great. That's all we've got for that. That's coming back. It'll be on for second reading on December 7th, and the public hearing and third and final reading and action will be on December 14th. So we will see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we come to council comments and liaison reports, and I'll start down there with Council Vice President Tui.
I have no comment tonight. Thank you.
Welcome back. Councilmember Schwab.
Yes, I'd like us to consider for our council retreat, the process of council members, like maybe a budget process time with council members we set aside for that. And also, I would like, if the city administration can deal with all their free time, is determine what the cost would be to administer the collections for the proposed BIA. Thanks. Well, I'd like the city staff's opinion on what it would cost. Yeah, if you have time. Yeah, more detail.
Yeah, that'd be
thanks.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fossey.
No questions or comments, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zarlingo.
For Councilmember Fossey, I attended the Historical Commission meeting 1 or 2 nights ago. just wanted to thank the commission members for adding their knowledge. There's a lot of vigorous discussion there, and I really appreciate the chance to learn some more myself about Everett's history, something I don't know in other parts of Everett as well as I do know the South End. Anyway, very neat meeting. Thanks to the commissioners, and I guess we'll be having some new ones in the coming year.
Thank you. Councilmember Hobley?
No comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan?
Yes. And you guys thought you were going to get out of here. Since I saw folks last, I attended the National League of Cities Conference in Kansas City, and it was very enlightening, a lot of really great discussions. I especially appreciated the tour of Kansas City and how some designated arts districts had revitalized vacant neighborhoods that had been just decimated after the trades and labor had left their town. So that was really exciting. Another really eye-opening workshop I went to was on substance use disorder and just dealing with drugs in our community. And one of the panelists was from Seattle King County the public health group down there, and had the statistic that I wanted to share, which I thought is just totally startling. He shared that in 2015, Seattle King County Public Health recorded 5 fentanyl deaths in the whole year. 5 in 2015, and this year Seattle King County Public Health is on track to 600 fentanyl overdoses over the course of the entire year. So I feel like deaths, and they're tracking about 600 non-fatal overdoses a month, which is just absolutely astounding. And I felt like, as our counterparts to the south, it's a good spotlight on the issues that we're dealing with here in Snohomish County as well. So that was a very sad statistic, but also one I think that is very pertinent to what we've been working with here in the city. I wanted to thank my fellow council members who've covered me at community meetings the last couple of weeks as I deal with the world's longest cold, so thank you so much for that. And since I saw everybody last, University of Washington beat the Ducks and the Cougs, so go Dogs.
Yeah. Thank you. I just had one comment. I wanted to remind council members, I know we talked about this before, but we are getting ready to implement the use of the metal detector for safety reasons as we come into this building. And so administration is working on getting that set up, and I don't know if it'll be operational next week or the following week, but before the end of the year, you will see that there. You may want to plan a few extra minutes just to get through, because we'll all be learning how that works. But essentially, you won't be able to bring your guns to council anymore. If you have any questions about that, just let me know, or you can talk to administration. And that's all we have, with no further business and no executive session. We are now adjourned.